Sword of Coming Chapter 1206. Chapter 1206 Yo Yo Lu Ming, the apple of the wild food. My heart is long, Qing Qing Zijin. If you think innocently, the love between men and women is similar to seeking Tao in the mountains. Sir, it rained a little differently this time. Ningji caught up with Qin Pingon and did not bring an umbrella when he went out. Senior brother Zhou Xian was usually the first to go to the Source Village School and prepare breakfast there. I didn't expect that it would rain halfway. Fortunately, I didn't run a few steps, but I met a gentleman who seemed to know the heavy rain before he went out. He is really a pedantic heaven and man. The boy's vision is shrewd and piercing. This is the best cultivation qualification. Maybe even the heavenly watchmen from all over the world can't see what the young man sees. In Qin Ping's eyes, this heavy rain is destined to last for several days, but in fact, every drop of rain is a golden word that contains Tao Qi. If there is a loose way, there is a way. But in the world, especially the preparation for rainy days of the top sex, with various formations and means, there is no verification of whether catching the rain is effective and how effective it is. I am afraid that we can only get a gradual proof after the rain stops, or after the rain stops, it will take tens of years and hundreds of years, and through various opportunities of Taoism, large and small. The only exceptions are probably those big monks who have already touched the bottleneck of the heavenly heights. Only this small group of people on the top of the mountain can get a relatively intuitive view of the Tao. I believe that many far-sighted and far-sighted monks in the world hope to break through the bottleneck of the ascension realm through this walk. Qin Pingon slowed down, tilted the umbrella towards the students, walked towards the school together and said with a smile, "It's not the same, this statement is quite good, very good." The patriarchs of the three teachings parted ways, bid farewell to the world, and rushed to the new heaven hand in hand, and confronted Zhou, who tried to repeat the way of heaven and arrange the world is a heaven. So of course the falling of this rain will be different, which has never happened in 10,000 years. Logically speaking, ordinary masters hardly have any feelings, but Ningji can keenly perceive that the torrential rain is unusual, which itself is a proof and recognition of the qualification of Taoism. Ningji blushed a little. He was just making a nonsense statement, and never thought that he would get a verbal award from his husband. Mr. is not easy to praise people. Qin Pingon said, "Ningji, do you want to learn fairy art?" Ningji said without hesitation, "Yes, of course I want to learn." All these years, the grandfather who fled to the capital of Yushuan Kingdom together depended on each other for their lives. Now the old man has returned to his hometown. Ningji thought that if he could succeed in his studies, he could go on a study tour alone earlier and go there to see his grandfather. I heard from my husband that teacher Lu taught my grandfather a Daoist technique that can strengthen the body. It is not difficult to be a long-lived old man. In fact, this is what Qin Pingon said implicitly. If you follow Lu Chen's words completely, as long as you still have the spirit of spreading branches and leaves, it will not be difficult for a dead tree to grow old in spring. In the matter of finishing, Qin Pingon and Lu Chen belonged to the same kind of people. They would not pat their buttocks and walk away, and they cared about getting together well and leaving well, and a good beginning and a good end. Qin Ping asked with a smile, "If one day you learn the art of immortality, what do you want to do most?" Ningji replied honestly, "I haven't thought about this question, sir. Do you have to wait for me to give a satisfactory answer before you can learn the legendary fairy art? I heard that those who learn Taoism, whether they are young people who are hearsay or books, seem to have great ambitions at the beginning of going up the mountain. After going up the mountain, they have to put in great perseverance and hard work. Difficulties and trials are the only way to achieve enlightenment and immortality." Qin Ping shook his head and said with a smile, "It's just a casual question. If someone asked this kind of question when I was about your age, I probably wouldn't be able to answer it. What is repairing Qi Jiping, 3 immortals, eating cold pork head meat? What is carrying mountains across lakes and seas to turn the tide? I have never heard of it. Let the boy in Nipping Lane answer it. Learning boxing and sword practice, building a bridge of longevity, just trying to survive." Ningji raised his head and said with a bright smile, "Sir, tell me more about the knowledge of the mountains. I have loved to listen to them since I was a child. Even if I don't learn fairy arts, I still find it interesting." Qin Pingon thought for a while and said slowly, "If you only talk about refining qi in a narrow sense, you don't have to take the practice of immortality too far, and simply regard it as a handicraft. There is no essential difference between a farmer, and a master teaching, but the threshold for cultivating Taoism is indeed higher than that of hundreds of crafts in the market. Whoever has good aptitude can learn quickly. They are all ordered by Tao Qi, which is naturally endowed by heaven and earth, and is a large collection of wealthy couples from the law and land. It's just that this kind of statement cannot escape the pattern of fatalism, and I have doubts about it. But if it is a broad sense of Taoism and truth-seeking, the threshold is high, and I have to admit that apart from my personal character, I have to talk about whether or not God has given me food. Having said that, Qin Ping took out a few talismans from his sleeves, which belonged to the relatively unpopular one character on the mountain, and wrote the same character, Xian, in seal script, official script and regular script respectively. Handing the 3 talismans to Ningji, Qin Pingon said with a smile, "Put them away first. I will teach you a kind of breathing method of 18 stops of sword qi in the near future. In the future you can study and refine qi in your spare time. Carefully observe the word immortal and write it down when you have any experience. This is not a homework for me to show to any outsiders. It is written by you for yourself. It is used to record the reading experience of different ages and stages. Don't underestimate this. A single word is considered not to be reading. In the ancient times, those Taoist priests and scholars, many of the great learnings that have continued to this day and are constantly popular, all came from 1 or 2 words or a certain sentence at the earliest." Ningji and his husband thanked each other, then carefully put away the 3 talismans and put them in his arms. The young man touched his chest and smoothed it gently as if he could feel at ease in this way. Qin Ping smiled and said, "Few people dare to say that they have finished reading the book, but if they have read the book well, you and I can still ask for a higher level in this state." Ningji patted his heart. The boy seemed to have taken a big reassurance. He grinned and said, "I remember every word that Mr. said, and I think about it carefully several times before going to bed every day. Mr. is a very substantive person. There are no requirements for food, housing and transportation, but Mr. is very particular about studying, very particular. For example, some books that are frequently read by the husband, as long as they are opened, outsiders can tell at a glance how many times the husband has read them, because the first time the annotations are all written in small script, and the second time is Zhubian. The vermilion text written in the narration will be relatively casual, it may be running script or even cursive script, and the third time I read the book, I will use the green ink ingot to grind the ink-dipped school script. The truth couldn't be simpler, it's just www. Novel. Come, if you don't write, it's like reading for nothing. Therefore, such the simplest unique method of reading does not require Qin Pingon to explain the truth to the student Ningji. Ningji will naturally learn from his husband and just copy it. Last time in Lupo Mountain, the little brother Cui Dongshan gave him a gourd-shaped inkstone as a gift from his classmates. Senior sister Pei Qian said that she was not good at reading and studying, so she gave Ningji a bag of fairy money, saying that when you see a book you like, at least you don't have to look at the price. Brother Chao gave Ningji more than a dozen books, asking Ningji to read which ones first and then which ones why to read and how to read. Chao Qinglang explained in detail. This may be an old tradition of Wensheng's lineage. When meeting with the same sect, they never like to talk about their respective realms and cultivation, and they are more concerned with studying. Qin Ping smiled and said, "Will you still be nervous when you go to Luopa Mountain next time?" Ningji said, "I will definitely still be nervous, but I won't be so nervous." Qin Pingon nodded and said, "Sir, I can teach you a trick that I have figured out by myself. When dealing with people, don't hurt the dignity in things, and in dealing with others, don't hurt the dignity in your words." Ningji's eyes lit up. "Easy to remember and easy to learn." Qin Ping said with a smile. "Easy to remember is easy to remember, not necessarily easy to learn." Living in this world, running around and working hard for Qin Pingon, it's just a game of stealing punches. If you don't know enough, think of others when you see them and accept them when you see them. When one day no punches to steal, it may be considered that one has really entered the realm of "I am already a master." Ningji said, "I'm just learning superficially and am far behind my husband's learning well." Qin Ping stretched out his hand outside the umbrella again, and the raindrops of those golden words hit the palm of his hand. Qin Ping found that he still couldn't catch them, and the rhyme of the words would dissipate on their own. If it goes on for a long time, it will be a bit hot to keep this posture. Qin Pingon tried to incorporate these soybean-sized raindrops into the long river of time in the small world of the human body just now, but found that those golden words could not be retained, and by force, the entire text could store water and form a pond. Unfortunately, those golden Dao Qi it will still disappear and there will still be a pool of stagnant water. It's not that Qin Ping is conceited. When he can't retain Dao Yun with his natal flying sword and magic methods, it means that many monks in the Ascension realm are in a normal situation, which is normal, or this is in line with the status of the patriarch of the three religions in the way of scattered Taoism. It is wishful thinking for the monks on the top of the mountain to try to solve the problem with strength. It is estimated that the correct answer is the power of Taoism, and whether they really recognize the root of the three teachings in their hearts, they have the opportunity to accept this gift of the Tao. Ningji followed suit, stretching out his hand to catch the rainwater, and the raindrops hit the palm of his hand, making the young man feel pain. It was so heavy that the young man grinned and wanted to withdraw his hand. Qin Pingan's expression changed slightly. He straightened the umbrella leaning towards the young man, patted the young man's shoulder and said with a smile, "Ningji, I guess this rain will last for a long time. You run back to your residence to get an umbrella. I will waiting for you here. Don't hurry, remember to change your clothes." Ningji originally had such a plan and there was still a distance away from the village school, so he couldn't let the rain wet his shoulders just to take care of himself. Without saying a word, the young man turned back the same way, galloped in the heavy rain. His steps were brisk and his figure was vigorous. Every time he took a breath, a white mist rose above the young man's head. Qin Ping stood where he was and soon saw the figure of the young man who had changed his clothes and ran back. Ningji was holding an umbrella in his hand, and there was an oiled paper umbrella under his arm which was for senior brother Zhao. How lucky I am to be able to meet these students and apprentices at that time and at this moment. Ningji trotted all the way to Qin Pingan's side and boldly asked, "Can I ask sir a question?" Qin Ping smiled and said, "If there is anything you can do, just ask." Ningji asked curiously, "What kind of person does Mr. want to be?" Qin Pingan reached out and touched the boy's head and gave an answer that was not an answer. "If you ask the teacher where to go, the student will know when he goes." Ningji admired him. I remembered another golden saying that can be used as the motto. Sure enough, the master is still very knowledgeable. Qin Ping patted the young man on the head lightly and said with an angry smile, "In the future, talk to Chao Qinglang more about learning and stop chatting with Cui Dongshan." Ningji said in a low voice, "Little senior brother is actually very knowledgeable and he said a lot of things that encouraged me to study with humility, and they all said very well." Qin Ping asked casually, "For example?" Ningji said, "For example, the little brother asked me to know the truth, but I didn't see the truth. Of course I don't know much, so I don't dare to talk nonsense. The little brother asked and answered by himself and helped me to solve my doubts. You can solve your doubts with one method and let me cherish the precious opportunity to get along with my husband day and night, read more, listen more, and learn 3 or 4 successful husbands from books and books, which is enough to benefit me for a lifetime." Qin Pingan said helplessly, "Do you really believe it?" Ningji wondered, "Believe it? Why don't you believe it? How dare you not believe it? I just said that the last time I saw how my husband persuaded the river master to drink at the table, the more I thought about it afterwards, the more learned I became." Qin Pingan laughed and said, "It's really a good example." Ningji really wanted to have a few more conversations with his husband, and then asked, "Aside from Yuanjing, what studies have you been studying recently?" Qin Pingan said, "I'm thinking about a game of chess. The opponent can determine the winner or loser by playing at least a few moves on the board. Then I think about whether all human natures have the same origin and different streams." Ningji let out a wow, amazed. This is impossible to learn. Walking on the path by the stream, passing old trees with green leaves, the sound of wind and rain on the branches, the same stream flowing, the mountains can't keep it. Usually it's just gurgling, whimpering for people, and it's like a loud voice in rainy season. Mr. and the students walked slowly under umbrellas. As they approached the school, Ningji suddenly said softly, "Sir." Qin Pingan joked, "Why, you are so talented, you want to recite a poem?" The boy originally wanted to ask his master why he was willing to stop and teach in the countryside, but he stopped asking after being interrupted by him. Qin Pingan said solemnly, "We from the literary sage lineage have come out with a #1 scholar." Ningji shook his head like a rattle. "Don't dare to think, don't dare to think." Qin Ping smiled and said, "You can think about it." There was about a quarter of an hour before class at the school. Qin Pingan put away his umbrella and stood under the eaves. The wind and rain were boundless and the sky was dark. He looked at the stone sundial on the edge of the grain drying field from a distance. It's almost time to meet the real demon. Whether he can return to the Jade Roar realm and touch the bottleneck again depends on what this sneaky and well-hidden inner demon really means. Those demons that have been cut and removed are not pure because they are rooted in part of Qin Pingan's humanity. It is like a confrontation between two armies. As the coach of one side, the demons themselves are always hiding in the dark. It has been driving hundreds of thousands or millions of soldiers under its command to attack the city and pull out the stronghold, deliberately showing weakness and deliberate temptation. Belongs to the distant confrontation the complexity of the human heart, the purity of the divinity, a tug of war. In fact, Qin Pingan once had a whimsical invite the king into the urn. That is, before the founders of the three religions scattered, he built an illusory and bone-strewn bridge of longevity through his own small world before the patriarchs of the three religions scattered. A so-called road to the sky so that the heavenly demon in Qingming Tianxia, who can be regarded as the 15th realm, who is free from Taoism and can be regarded as the 15th realm, will feel the fighting in the vast world and take the initiative to enter this place that Qin Pingan occupies at the same time. The ancient battlefield where the time, place and people are harmonious, and then let the founders of the three religions come and wipe them out once and for all. Of course, Qin Pingan, who is a risk-taker and risk-taker, has the possibility of reaching the sky in one step. The old man in the backyard of Yang's pharmacy once left a letter, asking Qin Pingan meaningfully, "Are you full? If you must eat it, eat the biggest one." With the help of external forces, try to directly eliminate a 15-level demon. Eat as much as you can and leave what you can't eat temporarily. Zhou Mi, who successfully climbed to the sky and left, occupied in ancient ruins of the heavenly court. This is the gift of heaven, and Zhou Mi began to pursue the 16th with the 15th realm. According to the old man's consistent behavior style, Qin Pingan as the other half-one shared equally with Zhou Mi. Presumably there must be another gift that is not much different in the world, just like the spring planting and autumn harvest in the field, waiting for Qin Pingan to harvest. The key depends on whether Qin Pingan dares to think and whether he can do it. Even if it is easier to invite the gods than to send them away, and even the patriarchs of the three religions cannot eradicate the hidden dangers of heavenly demons, don't forget that Qin Pingan still has one mind to practice swords outside the sky. Condescending. Accompanied by a sword bearer. It is another kind of bottom line of Qin Pingan. This is the 7th layer of thought and train of thought of Qin Pingan's retreat. But now it seems that Qin Pingan's calculation has completely come to nothing. That celestial demon didn't bite the bait at all. Maybe it felt the bait was too small, maybe it was Dao ancestor, it didn't dare to act rashly, or maybe it was already weighing the pros and cons, and saw through the mind of an ant in the nascent soul realm like Qin Pingan from afar, is not the 14th realm, and is also worthy of arm wrestling with it on an equal footing? In short, in its eyes, the exhaustive planning of layers of minds is like a child's play, an elementary school child shaking his head and explaining the 3,000 words of Taoism. Qin Ping laughed at himself. No matter what, he tried his best. Having traveled a long way and met many people, Qin Pingan has forgotten when and who said it. The guilt comes from what he did wrong and the regret comes from what he didn't do back then. Qin Ping moved his eyes upwards and the heavy rain was like a curtain. In the sky. The sky is empty. Some Ascension Realm consummate monks have more opportunities. The 4 seasons are beautiful and clear, the human relationship is harmonious and beautiful, the winter is cold and the spring is warm and the wild grass grows by itself. Weeds grow deep. Ningji stood over the stove and called softly, "Sir, breakfast is ready." Qin Pingan withdrew his thoughts and went to the kitchen. For breakfast there were only pickled vegetables and porridge, plus 2 tea eggs. Qin Pingan said suddenly, "Under the tree, Ningji, I hope you can become such a kind of person." Zhou Xian stopped his chopsticks and Ningji raised his head and asked, "What kind of person?" Qin Ping said with a smile. "For example, Lu Jinglong, the Tai Hui sword sect, and Wen Yu, the head of Tianmu Academy, are scholars who deserve the word mellow Confucianism. They look like they are warm." On Luopa Mountain, because the rain was too heavy, Daoist Xianwei stopped watching at the mountain gate, chatted with Zheng Dafeng and Qin Lingjun, and moved a bench to sit under the eaves to enjoy the rain. He was just chatting nonsense. Where the feet slipped on the watermelon rind, Zheng Dafeng casually chatted about the saying, "God is perfect," saying that wild beasts in the mountains will not harm children, and it is the same as Buddhist dragon elephants that can easily repel and tame wild beasts. The truth is, a mountain's ancestral temple has Dao Qi, and a person also has his own humanity and spirit. Taoist Xianwei heard this, thoughtful, and the little boy in Tsing Yi had a shallow mind, only thinking that Brother Dofeng still had something. The town god's temple incense man who came here to order Mao is famous for being unshakable in all weathers and thunder. He didn't see the Taoist priest Xianwei at the mountain gate, so he rode a new black snake to the house and wandered away. Looking at those three guys who are not doing their jobs properly, Zhu Yitong is heartbroken just because Daoist Jingqing is Qinshan's his confidant. After all, he is half an outsider in Luoyuan, so it is hard to say anything. He knows the way. After entering the study room of Taoist priest Xianwei, it made the green snake wait at the gate of the mountain, and went over the mountains to find Guardian Zhou. Not long ago, Qin Shanzhu really went to the Chuzhou town god's temple as scheduled. Gao Ping's elm bump seemed to be enlightened, and he didn't even have the slightest airs. It's nothing more than arranging troops and strategizing. Zhu Yitong doesn't understand it very well, but he is happy and worried. Why did you go early? Became the capital city god of the great Li Jingshi. On the other side of Dali capital city, the old Yuanying Lu Jia, who was guarding the alley outside the Rinyun Yiyun building, submitted his resignation letter to the Ministry of Punishment and resigned from his position as a gatekeeper. The old man said he would go to another continent to have a look. He's not a fool. The old man knows that since Qin Pingon came to this alley, all the foreigners who came here to show up, no matter whether they know him or not, the people he stopped outside the alley were all what he called, if you haven't seen an expert who has never seen an expert before, then the joke that the national teacher Tuichen made back then is considered a promise. Lu Jia planned to visit Beiju Luzhou first, but before taking the cross-continental ferry to leave Aquarius Island, the old man took a trip to the border of Chuzhou, disembarked at Nujiadu and walked to the gate of Luopa Mountain on foot. Torrentially, the old man held an umbrella and looked at the archway of Shanmen and left. Although he didn't go to the gate, he still had a good time. Yulu and Xianxia walked north all the way and finally came to the territory of the old Lu dynasty. The capital of the former homeland is now located in Dali Zhaozhou. How to deal with the capital of the subjugated dynasty, especially the imperial palace. The Dali Ministry of Industry is a good hand with rich experience. The streets and alleys adjacent to the rich and aristocratic families in the old days have mostly become common people's homes. The young emperor and female national teacher who had already returned to the country in Tonghishao did not stay here for long. They left this huge city once surnamed Lu, and occasionally joined forces with Yufeng for a distance. The dog barks, the smoke curls up, and the children are loved. During the passage, green bamboos are sparsely scattered, a few peach blossoms lean towards the river, and a group of ducks swim across the sparkling water full of peach blossoms. Yulu began to choose the fishing position and throw the pole, which was a big spoiler. In the end they came to a mountain which used to be the first fairy house of the Lu dynasty, and it was occupied by a Dali native sect. It was a mountain fairy house second only to the Changchun Palace. The minister of Fulong has never been mean and ungrateful because of occupying this dojo, coupled with the great support of the Dali court, from the bottom of the third-rate mountain sect in Aquarius continent. In less than 50 years, it has grown step by step. Grow into a second-rate power. In fact, Yulu has been doing well all this way. Thank you. After all, she is a sentimental woman with a lot of family and country feelings. The more indifferent Yulu behaves, she will inevitably scold him a few words. This is the first time Xianxia returned to his hometown after he became a survivor of Lu's prisoner and moved to the old Longzhou and saw the old mountain scene again. Compared with the Great War that swept across several continents, looking back at this hometown, the mountains and rivers in their eyes now seem to have risen and fallen in a small way. The new Taoist in the mountain looking down at the moment, the old owner of the mountain looking up at this moment. There are still many white clouds on the mountain. Xianxia cried a lot, said it was crying, but there was no heart-piercing wail. She just squatted on the side of the road, holding her face in her hands, and refused to get up. Yulu didn't comfort her either, but just waited silently for her to finish crying, and then took her to find a place to drink. He had traveled with his companions on several trips, and he had a tacit understanding for a long time. In the heavy rain, in a roadside wine shop, the old man who sells wine is dozing off, and the customers are not very attentive, but the young shop assistants are more enthusiastic. But it is a pity that they met two poor ghosts, guessing whether they are the kind of young couple who eloped otherwise. Judging by their clothes, they don't look like the kind of men and women who can't afford good wine. A slender middle-aged man wearing a neat black robe took off the bamboo hat, and the man with the purple jade hairpin on his head stood under the eaves, gently waving the hat to shake off the raindrops. He picked out a sitting at the nearby wine table. He ordered half a caddy of homegrown loose wine, and asked the waiter to cook 2 appetizers. The man took a sip of the wine, turned his head to look at Yu Lu and said with a smile, "It's a good match. People who don't like to drink here and there, and what they drink is the name and price of the drink." If Qin Pingon hadn't reminded him in advance, Yu Lu would not have guessed the other party's identity, so he smiled and said, "Did Bai Jianxian come here specially for me? Thank you, very nervous." After all, the other party might be an ascension-level sword cultivator. If it weren't for the Hulong Daoist of Lidi Peak Jinshu Baishang, he would be the #1 person on the mountain in Beiju Luzhou. Bai Chong smiled and said, "The children of the Lu family are notoriously inferior to each other until a prince, Lu Ji, is born. It's a pity that this real dragon succumbed to the Qiandi and died without achieving the climate. In the end it became a joke. If I remember correctly, a group of young people traveled far away to study. Qin Pingon was 14 years old. Learning boxing, Yu Lu was already a martial artist of the 6 realms at that time. He entered the Golden Body realm in the library of the Sui Mountain Cliff Academy. It was good for 30 years in Hudong and 30 years in Heshi. However, Qin Pingon has seen the scenery of martial arts on the level of the ultimate return to the true. It is really more popular than others. What do you think, Lu Ji? Yu Lu smiled and said, "Lu Ji became Yu Lu, and Lu Yu also became Bai Chong. Now if I guessed correctly, there seems to be Lu Qing, the founding emperor of the Lu family." Bai Chong picked up the wine bowl and said with a smile, "Will you accept the wine given by Bai Yi?" Yu Lu laughed and said, "Why not get charcoal in the snow?" Bai Chong asked, "Aren't you worried that Qin Pingan's heart will be resentful, and the incense that has been accumulated so hard will fade away, causing the two parties to go further and further apart, and the gain outweighs the loss?" Yu Lu said, "Brothers settle accounts clearly. Bai Jianxian doesn't have to worry about it." Bai Chong took out a brocade box and said, "I only accepted one direct disciple named Zhou Xian. He can go to Tongya Continent and serve as the chief priest of your royal family. As for the pill in the box, it is extremely precious. It is my meeting gift. Yes, you can take it yourself, but you can continue to be the emperor. Of course, you can also give it away. The monks of Yuanying and Feixing are not suitable for taking this pill because it is easy to waste everything. Xianzhen's surname is Gu, his Taoist name is Huainan, his whereabouts are elusive, he has no desires, he likes to observe the precepts and travel to the 5 capitals and back and forth between the dark world. It is estimated that he is only half a step away from being in the 5 elements. He is one of my senior brothers. It is a pity I have never masked my face. There are hundreds of refinements for knives and hundreds of steaming for pills. I only know that senior brother Gu, who is highly respected by his master, is best at refining the elixir for bringing the dead back to life, and the Phoenix Gang recipe for returning the soul. Gu's senior brother has never accepted apprentices in this life, and he has never written a book, so it is not my generation who can know the method of refining and refining. Those who are good at things in future generations only know its general outline. I still know the name of this pill from a stranger. 4th party, also known as 100 Ridges. Yu Lu took the brocade box without hesitation and asked, "Why did you and Qin Pingon become enemies?" Bai Chong looked at the dark rain curtain outside the door and said with a casual smile, "Whether it is intentional or not, he has ruined a big plan of mine after all. Otherwise I should at least be at the peak of the Ascension realm today, and I can seek the 14th anniversary early." Border Road. Yu Lu said, "In this way it is not a small feud." Bai Chong smiled and said, "Actually it's okay, after all we are from the same town. On the narrow path it's just that everyone shows their special abilities and winning or losing won't be too embarrassing." Yu Lu asked, "But there will definitely be a sword question?" Bai Chong picked up the wine bowl and drank it down and said in a slightly helpless tone, "It can only be a fair and above-board questioning of swords in the same situation. There is no way that Qin Pingon is really lucky and now he has too many identities." Cui Dongshan and Jiang Shangzhen had a clear division of labor. On the 2 isolated sites of the Lotus Root blessed land, each stared at one place and followed the border of the formation to see if there were any loopholes and if they could find a few fish that slipped through the net. As a result, Chief Shou was lucky. He really found a very hidden side door path of the big formation. A good method. A master of art is bold. But it is not clear whether this deeply hidden big fish is now inside or outside. Jiang Shangzhen let the Yangshan body sit on the spot and wait for the rabbit, and the Yinshan traveled far away and continued to patrol around quickly. Anyway, the territory is not big, so he used the most stupid method, scurrying around like headless flies. The body is hanging in the air overlooking the earth, the book is used up, and the method of derivation and calculation has always been something that Xianxia is not good at, and he is even less willing to spend his time studying. As the talisman avatar of the Daoist, Qin Pingon quietly left the Temple of Begging Flowers in Dai Mountain. First he found the old man who called himself Tao Zhe and asked him for help to investigate the previous lives of Yuan Huang and Wu Jiang. There is no problem, the two young warriors are both natives of a Hua-blessed land. Qin Ping's presence in this blessed land is somewhat similar to that of Lu Qin, who sits in Baiyujing in Qingming Tianxia. He monitors the world's spiritual beings and enlightened people. As long as you are patient enough, it is easy to find someone. Of course, the premise is that the other party does not have the kind of means to cover the sky. After confirming that both Yuan Huang and Wu Jiang were innocent, Qin Pingon went to find the female cultivator who offered a bundle of fairy ropes at the Damu temple. Sitting like a cicada in the carriage, the disciples mistakenly thought that the master Xinzuan was really in seclusion. When the carriage arrived at the gate of the mountain, she still showed no sign of leaving the seclusion, so the disciples had to guard the carriage. Qin Ping shrank from the mountains and rivers several times, and came to this sect where there was only one qi refiner besides her. When he opened the curtain of the car, the woman who had been disarmed by herself looked as if she was alive. Walking is the best plan. Qin Pingon had no choice but to move out of his purely divine self and temporarily leave the heart of Beijing. Qin Pingon in white clothes with a pair of golden eyes squatted in the carriage, stretched out his hand to pat the woman's fair face, and scolded with a smile, "Shameless, sir, they are pretending to be women, thanks to you can think of it," shaking the talisman and avatar together. "You are a little witch." If Qin Pingon is busy at the school to give the real body to the boys, it is inevitable to reward them. Qin Pingon in white, who rarely came out, was chattering non-stop. He still had to do business. He stretched out a finger to touch the eyebrows of the corpse-sitting woman, and pulled it lightly, and there was a winding wriggle. The pale gold thread was pulled out by him, and the gold thread fluctuated as if it might be blown away by the wind at any time, and the golden luster faded very quickly, turning into mercury color at a speed visible to the naked eye. Qin Ping waved his hand and said with a smile, "Let's go." The silk thread flashed and went away suddenly. Qin Pingon in white followed him out of the carriage. Riding the wind extremely fast with his sleeves bulging and his ethereal figure, he followed the golden line and went straight to the boundary that Jiang Shangzhen was in charge of patrolling. The only surviving qi refiner in the sect was not of a high level, but his ability to judge the situation was not bad at all. Instead of pursuing the uninvited guest's arrogance and offense, he fell down on the ground and repeatedly claimed that Hu Xianjun was here. Superior. Just thinking in my heart, I just hope that I don't end up being wiped out. And those confused disciples kneel down on the ground with a clatter. The silk thread that was gradually almost transparent passed through the side door of the formation. Jiang Shangzhen was taken aback for a moment, and then saw Qin Shanju passing by him and said with a smile, "Chairman Zhou, you are making great achievements at this moment. The willow leaves follow me to kill the earth immortal." The silk thread dissipated outside the door of a brothel, but it was not a failure. Qin Pingon in white floated to the ground, shook his sleeves, strode into the brothel full of makeup and smiled with the purest barbarian elegance. "It turns out that it is hidden here." Qin Ping walked to the central area of the lobby and looked around. There were Ying Yen Yen and the old bustard who were busy, and the flesh and blood business was also a living manual labor not shabby. Qin Ping still didn't use his heartfelt words and said with a smile, "I have come to the door to ask for an interview, fellow Taoists. Don't hide anyway, begging for mercy is useless, since you are a dead man, then die generously." The bustard, who still had charm and was full of rouge, was stunned for a moment, chewing out the aftertaste. Could it be that his colleagues hired someone to mess things up? The tricks are quite fresh, what a shame. She suddenly screamed, "Where did you come from? You dare to come here to make trouble? Don't you know that Mr. Zhao, who patrols the city and the censor, is our regular customer here?" Half of the 500,000 refugees in Tonghishao were now scattered in 7 or 8 large cities and giant towns. As for the vast majority of Qi practitioners, they were all driven to the other area by the Jiang family monks in the Yunku cave like ducks. On the territory, if it is said that martial arts are respected here, whoever has a hard fist has a reason, and there is the fairy master Xiaoyao. In fact, it is still reasonable by means. It's just because both parties know well that today is different from the past. After all, they are in a situation where they are far away from home, and they are dependent on others, so they can't go too far. Qin Ping smiled and said, "It's you." To be honest, fellow Daoist's acting skills are very average. These years he has been busy engraving and selling books. Doesn't the theater troupe often go there? The bustard, who was a middle-aged woman, was choked for a moment. Staring at the very strange young Yingguan, she sighed faintly, "Your name is well deserved." Qin Pingon asked suspiciously, "Is this your real face?" She asked curiously, "I'm careful enough, can I ask how did you find me?" Qin Pingon smiled and said, "I happened to pass by. I haven't had any flower wine yet, so I just came in and took a look." She seemed to have resigned herself to her fate, and she didn't even have the thought of trying to escape. She said in a trembling voice, "The last thing I need to do is ask the hermit official how can I live." Qin Pingon raised a palm, shook it gently, the flesh and blood melted away, and the palm of the hand was instantly covered with bones, and the flesh and blood that fell from the shaking condensed in the air. "Take it." She was dumbfounded. Did this young hermit official lose his mind and go crazy? "I have been planning for many years. I just want the other party's hair or flesh and blood. The next best thing is to see the other party with my own eyes, but the effect will be greatly reduced. The weight of causality is not enough, and it may not be able to severely damage Qin Pingon. Dao is fundamental. If it really doesn't work, plant it on the female cultivator of the Fox country who went out to practice." Qin Ping smiled and said, "You are an eyebrow painter and a clothes maker. Maybe you are also a novelist who is proficient in barnyard official and unofficial history, and you also have a rare priest in the wild? You have so many skills that you don't overwhelm yourself and you can melt into a furnace. It is reasonable to say that you are a friend. You don't have to worry about getting along in the wild world, so why stay here and compete with me?" She stretched out her 2 fingers and took off 3 layers of human skin that looked like clothes one after another. First, she became the patrolling censor Mr. Zhao, then a middle-aged scholar with an elegant demeanor, and finally her real appearance, which was still a woman. But her face is younger, her face is pale, her lips are bright red, and there is a very eye-catching scar on her neck. The sword energy slowly overflows, distorting her otherwise handsome face. She asked, "Master Yingguan, do you still remember me?" Qin Pingon in white shook his head and said, "I really don't remember." He didn't remember, just really didn't remember. Seeing that she didn't take the bait, he put away the fake flesh and blood mixed together like mud, and returned it to the palm of his hand. Jiang Shangzhen gathers Yangshan and Yinshan together and sits on the railing on the 2nd floor. In fact, he hasn't visited the brothel for a long time. Suddenly she was furious and stretched out her hands to press the wound on her neck, looking like she was insane. "Ning Yao, it's thanks to Ning Yao, that son of a bitch. The possibility of the 5 realms." Jiang Shangzhen only felt that his scalp was numb, and he couldn't help but look at the mountain master. "It's weird, didn't he stop this girl from swearing? But it seems that I don't need to sacrifice my natal flying sword?" In an instant, this savage female cultivator at the nascent soul realm found herself in a strange and mysterious situation. There is no treacherous and gloomy aura, no sign of murderous intent, but more like a golden and jade forest full of aura and thick as water. When she used all kinds of escape methods, she found that she tried her best to travel far away against the wind, and the seemingly small mountain grew, which made her unable to leave the boundary of the mountain. Absolutely fitting connection. She tried her best, sacrificed a lot of natal objects and magic powers, and every time she smashed that mountain, it would return to its original appearance the next moment. This almost made her Dao heart collapse, and she was so exhausted by one person and one mountain, she didn't even know how many days or months had passed. In the end, she had no choice but to give up the idea of brute force to break through the formation, and began to climb the mountain. The mountain seemed to be like spring all the year round. On the mountain path, wintersweet, narcissus, peach blossom and crabapple and 100 flowers were new in order. There was a young exiled immortal who diligently brewed wine while it was in bloom. On the top of the mountain, the host in white, full of morality, sat at a table, stretched out a palm, pointed to a bowl of wine on the table, smiled and said, "Remember, this is called sorghum wine." She stands where she is. He continued to laugh and said, "This is called sorghum wine, remember? Girl, you must not remember, it's okay, I can say it again." After that he repeated, over and over again, while the nun listened to the opening remarks over and over again. This she only knows that the person in white introduces the name of the drink every time, but the other she who seems to be separated by her soul, the Taoist heart that was already shaky before climbing the mountain, can no longer support it, because she clearly remembers that the young hermit has repeated it. This is called sorghum wine hundreds of times. In the dark, she noticed another self who seemed to have completely forgotten the word. Qin Pingon in white finally changed his words. When you came here you saw winter sweet, narcissus, peach blossom, crabapple, rose, peony. Whenever Qin Pingon said a flower name, she who was out of mind would completely forget that flower name, as if she had never heard of or seen this flower name in her life. Flower. When Qin Pingon said this word step by step, in the course of her life, it seems that there is no such thing anymore. Yuanying realm. Wild world. Qi refiner. When Qin Ping uttered these 3 words, she immediately forgot them. Is it swordsmanship? Is it supernatural powers? This Qin Pingon is simply a monster who is neither human nor immortal nor god nor ghost. There is no need to let the opponent die and the soul is scattered. On the contrary, deliberately keep it intact and only play tricks on the mind of the cultivator. She is very clear about the despairing heart. As long as Qin Pingon is willing to erase herself first and fill up the lake in her heart, then the whole self will become a blank sheet of paper in a certain sense. Qin Pingon writes any text on it, she is that her. Who taught you that? The Tao is 1 foot tall and the devil is 10 feet tall. I have been dealing with the demons for a long time, so I have to learn this technique by myself to protect myself. Why leave me with this bit of intelligence? Practice. You need to verify each other with you. Afterwards, Qin Ping reversed the order and returned the words, Qi practitioner, and wild world, to her one by one until the sentence, this is called sorghum wine. She was already waiting to die and she had no more confidence to speak of. Only then did I realize that cultivating the Tao can be so outrageous. The Tao can be cultivated in this way and this kind of Tao can be cultivated. It's just that for some reason the other party was silent for a long time, and when she looked up with a complete mind and body, she saw a hermit official in white with tears all over his face. Her mind was blank at first, and then she had a flash of inspiration and blurted out, "Are you Qin Pingan's heart demon?" The man in white wiped his tears, the corners of his mouth curled up, and he seemed to be crying and laughing. Who said otherwise? It wasn't until this moment that she realized that where she was standing, there was a mountain of bones, all corpses. A man in a blue shirt with a hosta on his head appeared out of nowhere. With golden eyes he smiled and said, "I finally found you. The wine brewer is the devil and the drinker is the god. Is the order reversed?" The heavy rain stopped for a while and the sky cleared up. Just looking at the posture, the rain still had to fall. On the other side of the village school, there was a teacher squatting by the stream and rubbing a pair of pants stained with feces and urine. Practice makes perfect. Anyway, it's not once or twice. With a bare buttocks Mongolian boy. The child was reluctant to go home and put on a pair of underpants. The gentleman ran home after talking about it and then swaggered back to the stream. When he found that the husband was not there, he suddenly became nervous. Fortunately, the husband did not dry his underpants. On the bamboo pole in the grain drying field, the school was reciting books loudly. The husband was standing at the door. The child breathed a sigh of relief, ran to the husband and complained in a low voice, saying that Ame seemed to want to drop out of school because her mother despises you, sir. You are not good at teaching. If you follow the teacher, you will not be promising in the future. You have no hair on your mouth and you can't do things well. You are still a bachelor when you are an adult. What can you do? No wonder your eyes are not straight when you walk. I always like to stare at girls and ants, so to say, if you want to learn the real thing, you have to go to the school of the old master in Wuxia village. Let's just say a penny is a penny. This is called a gentle scum. It will mislead your children. The young man listened to the children's chatter and he couldn't help but frown. I have already dropped out of school 3 times, and it would be outrageous to drop out again. The child first said something very sincere and then asked a heart-pounding question. Sir, don't worry, I'm definitely on your side, sir. Tell me the truth, you have studied for a few years. Read how many books have you read? Qin Ping touched the child's head and said with a smile, Sir, I haven't been to school for a day, but I have read many books. The child sighed and patted the husband's wrist. Sir, stop talking. I will not. I want to drop out of school. I used to think about being a scholar. Sir, you can return the money. I don't need to drop out. If I get the money back, don't give it to my father. I will share it with you. Let's buy candied haws and eat them. Those who are not talented will talk about it later. Qin Ping tapped a chestnut lightly on the child's head and said with a smile, Go to study. Sword of Coming Chapter 1207. Chapter 1207. It snowed heavy. There are a lot of flowers in the mountains and white clothes make wine. Qin Pingon, who appeared later, picked up the bowl of sorghum wine on the table. He is also a person who eats a lot of food and steals 100 styles of boxing. He really found a treasure. He called you a fellow Daoist, which is very appropriate, and asked, "Fellow Daoist, tell me your wonderful story so we can get it." As a side dish. The female cultivator couldn't help concealing it, and she couldn't hide anything. The Qingbai, two people who were standing and sitting, saw everything in their minds and scenes, and they could see clearly just because a picture of walking on a horse and looking at lights related to her life experience had appeared on the top of the mountain. The profound memories of the past are those painted patterns that resemble real people. Those whose memories are blurred are gray and white portraits. Those whose memories and reality are unclear, the pictures presented are chaotic. It turns out that her alias is Su Jiaoqia, the real name of the Yaozu Shaoxing, whose Taoist name is Yuren, was nicknamed Xiaogang by her master. Her real body is an ancient bird that has not been recorded, and she likes to fly around the world with fire. Later, the emerald green feather coat and robes made from immortal sloughs were given the name Big Appearance by the preacher. The demon in white gloated and said, "It's really a bird." Miss Xiao almost succeeded in this innocent disaster with sinister intentions and years of planning. Qin Pingon, with the golden eyes of the jade hairpin on his head, smiled and said, "A nascent soul realm warrior who can be loyal to Luapa Mountain after his memory has been reshaped, comes with a magic robe of half-immortal soldier rank, and a description the methods of Mei Ku and the tailor, and you can also learn a secret knowledge of the barbaric priest. It is really a lucrative business, making a lot of money and making a lot of money." The demon in white sneered, "This kind of shady method can only deal with chi practitioners who are lower than myself, and it is not a superior method." Qin Pingon in the green shirt took a sip of wine, and stared playfully at the savage female nun with a bleak face. The big-looking magic robe fits the skin of the eyebrow painter and the inside of the seamstress, coupled with our strict control of details and careful attention to detail. Putting it all together, isn't it that under the Ascension realm, whoever she looks like is whoever she looks like? Coincidentally, when she dozed off and wanted to sleep, someone brought a pillow. I believe that the slew of Sovereign Han in his hand will not be hidden for long. After all, fire cannot be covered with paper. I am afraid that Sanshan Fudi will soon notice something is wrong, but if Miss Xiao, who is good at acting, goes to Tianmu Mountain, the academy, with Wen Yu, the deputy head of the mountain, can play a play, which may temporarily dispel the doubts of the Wanyao Zone Patriarch Hall. Why not be more cruel and let Miss Xiao go to Sanshan Blessed Land to have a dove occupying the magpie's nest? Dead man, while where is it not a dead man? Xiao Xing has outstanding talent for cultivating Taoism. Since she can remember, she seems to be able to learn everything quickly, and because of some unknown relationship, there is no threshold for learning anything, and there is no worry about being greedy. There was nothing left to learn, so she began to go down the mountain to practice, and she likes to travel around the world all year round, collecting all kinds of illusions from barnyard officials and unofficial histories, especially delving into the well-created wilderness Shuiyunwen, because she is determined to write a book about the wilderness world. When the war started, Xiao Xing, who was the bottleneck of the nascent soul realm before he was 100 years old, was named and recruited by Tuyue Mountain. In the first battle, he was hit by Ning Yao's sword energy on the battlefield and almost fell into a state. It is estimated that Ning Yao still does not know that there is such a number one demon clan earth fairy as her. The devil in white put his arms around his sleeves and said with a smile, "Miss Xiao is really a hard-working person. She deliberately planned to get revenge and she gave up her life to avoid it. As a result, the enemy didn't even know who she was, and she didn't even have the qualifications to be remembered. So I had to vent my anger. No one else, after all. Miss Xiao has not been completely blinded by hatred. She still knows more or less in her heart, knowing that she will never be able to avenge Ning Yao in this life. She is the most legitimate person in the world. Definitely not an ordinary Ascension Realm sword cultivator is comparable." The drinker in Tsing-yi showed a look of admiration. Miss Xiao took a shortcut that is very correct and saves worry and effort. She kills two birds with one stone. If she hadn't been caught out today and had the retreat at the bottleneck of the nascent soul realm, she wouldn't have to face the inevitable invincibility. Ning Yao is the heart demon of Jizi. The demon in white smiled and said, "Century-year-old nascent soul, ordinary genius." The drinker in Tsing-yi sighed, "You must be a genius if you say something stupid." Xiaoxing outside the picture scroll of life is like a woman without clothes, being judged by others at will. In the following scene, Xiaoxing landed on Tongye continent together with Gui Yu Tent. While recovering from her injuries, she hated Ning Yao in her heart, and at the same time shuttled around Tongye continent's palace libraries, collecting ancient and rare books. The girl Do Ko, who wears a sword and is actually a sword repairman, is a longtime friend in her boudoir. The sword repairer Do Ko's natal flying sword is a fierce ghost. Before Tongyi's Hao completely sank, the two parties had parted ways, and the friend Dogao was nowhere to be found. Xiaoxing used a master's secret biography, which was able to hide his realm and disguise himself as immortal, and he was able to follow the refugees into the Ohua blessed land to take refuge. With the help of Feng Silang's supernatural power similar to the identity of the Qintian Watcher Qisher, she deduced it. Since Qin Pingon is Ninjio's Taoist partner, and she can't go to the colorful world where Feishing City is located, she will exhaust all her knowledge and skills. The method must seriously injure Qin Pingan's vitality and interrupt the avenue. Xiaoxing feels that this is more likely to destabilize Ning Yao's Taoism than any loss. Earlier, Qin Pingon said that she was a dead soldier, which was right in his words. Xiaoxing never thought of returning to his hometown alive, and at the price of his own life he cut off the way to the top of the last hermit official of the Sword Qi Great Wall, and let Ning Yao has been regretting that sword handed out all his life. If she wants to remember Xiaoxing's name all her life, is there anything more beautiful than revenge in this world? The devil in white sighed, sure enough, if the fortune falls to the bottom, it will be very prosperous. It's just a random thread. This can be a surprise. The drinker in Tsing Yi is like an ancient deity who is flawless and flawless. Sword cultivator cardamom, I will remember you. While speaking, Xiaoxing's life picture scroll is like a long river of time flowing backwards, like the pages of a book being turned back with a rattling sound. The drinker in Tsing Yi stretches out his hand again, and holds the girl who looks like a saber sword cultivator. Dogao made a hanging portrait of a figure for me to all, which he put into his sleeve. She is one of the troublemakers behind the scenes in Tongyi's Hao. It would be a bit interesting. It can save a lot of trouble. Even the sneaky and hard-to-find golden core talisman monk can be caught together. The content of the final picture scroll is how she laid out this blessed place of lotus roots. She opened a bookstore in the city and hired workers to engrave books day and night. She has acquired a lot of her family property, never thought that Xiaoxing would carry a few corpses of plague gods with her, and she is also a mountain doctor who is proficient in alchemy and herbal medicine. He is a genuine genius. No wonder a mountain wants to invite a nascent soul realm to come out of the mountain by name, and leave his hometown to be a guest of Howren. The drinker in Tsing Yi put down the empty bowl and praised, now I'm just curious about one thing. Who first encouraged Miss Xiao to enter the Ohua paradise? I don't believe you noticed this opportunity from the very beginning. There must be some expert advice. You only made up your mind to be this dead man after confirming that what he said was true through the means of Feng Xilang. Xiaoxing looked at a loss. Obviously not a disguise. The drinker in Tsing Yi clapped his hands lightly. Fei Ran? Zhou Qingao? Or Xiaoxing, who the two birds met together. When he said these two names, Xiaoxing buzzed for a moment. His mind and soul seemed to be pulled tens of thousands of times in an instant, and his whole body was like a sieve in a pile of river sand from the deepest memory of people, trying to pan out 1 or 2 grains of gold, but in this process Xiaoxing will suffer. The demon in white smiled and reminded, if she continues to scream like this, she will become an idiot. The drinker in Tsing Yi sneered. Old sword Immortal Qi has a good saying, young people should pay attention in their next life. No matter public or private grievances, no matter who you want to compete with for revenge, it doesn't matter as long as you use your best means, each will decide the outcome according to his ability. But who gave you the courage to scold Ning Yao? Sure enough, 2 grains of gold were sifted out from the deepest part of the memory where the Qi palace of an inconspicuous acupoint in Xiaoxing was stripped and sealed again. Zhou Qingao. Firen used the flying sword and the secret method to cut off the Dao mark, and looked at the woman whose eyes were blurred between reality and dream, so that she would mistakenly think that she thought of entering the Ohua paradise, and with the help of Qin Pingon and Ning Yao to have a curveball with the idea of revenge. Firen said to himself, Friend Yuren, you have to erase these traces. How offended you are. You will definitely not remember seeing us, and you don't need to remember this meeting, but it may not be the case in the future. I just hope that fellow Daoists don't have the chance to remember what happened today. Zhou Qinggao moved his lips slightly and did not make a sound, just looking at the shape of his mouth. He was saying something in the words of Dali official Qin Yingguan, but I still hope that Miss Xiao will remember this one day, and look forward to the next time we meet in the wilderness. Do a replay. The devil in white smiled and said, these two guys really miss you more than the infatuated woman. I guess that as long as you are willing to betray Haoran, Brother Fei is willing to give up the position of co-lord of the world, and Brother Zhou is more willing to serve as a for you. The drinker in Tsing Yi paid no attention to it, stretched out his fingers and gently turned the white bowl. After reading the touching stories of Miss Xiao, the wine in the bowl is also finished and it's my turn to treat guests. I will give you a bowl of wine in return. You write a wonderful landscape story. Xiaoxing screamed, no. The next moment in the brothel, Jiang Shangzhen saw the scene that almost gave him goosebumps. The savage female cultivator who lost her luster and was dazed for just a moment, then woke up and slept full, like waking up from a big dream. She shook her head slightly and looked at Qin Pingon in white clothes with pure golden eyes. The first sentence she spoke was, Mountain Lord, let me search for the trace of that monster beast? Jiang Shangzhen was dumbfounded. How did you do it? Use the nascent soul realm to control the nascent soul realm? A cultivator is inherently tenacious and tough, so how can he talk about an earth immortal who has achieved success in cultivating the Tao? It is not easy for a great monk on the top of the mountain to tamper with the memory of a chi trainer whose realm is quite different. If there is no difference of 2 or 3 realms, it is impossible to succeed, not to mention that the great monk must have a lot of secret methods to have a chance to do it. Only then did he dare to take this ruthless hand and only talked about how to cut off the monk's memory. Tearing off those complicated veins, branches and leaves is the first hurdle, and then how to fill the memory, fill in the blank and the old state of mind seamlessly and naturally. It is necessary to make all the train of thought reasonable, and it is a higher pass. Otherwise, if there is a little carelessness, a Taoist heart born in the monk's nature will notice something wrong and a kind of evil will appear in the small world of the human body. As a result of the catastrophic collapse of the world, Qi practitioners will either become idiots with their minds turned into ashes, or they will easily become mad. A barbaric female cultivator, a nascent soul realm who dares to enter the Ohua blessed land to make troubles, has a strong Taoist heart, one can imagine. Jiang Shangzhen thinks he can't do this kind of feat and am afraid that Lao Ersun, who is in the Ascension realm, still can't do this step. Qin Pingon looked up at the railing on the second floor and said with a smile, Chief Shou, then I will retire. Jiang Shangzhen was speechless. Following Qin Shan's line of sight, the woman turned her head to look at the green-clothed scholar with frosty temples, turned around and clasped her fists. The charming woman with flying eyebrows introduced herself with a smile from her heart. My name is Su Jiaoqie and I am the sword master. The unnamed disciple of the old deaf son of the Great Wall of Qi, who was instructed by the hidden official, took the lead in leaving his hometown and secretly sneaked into Tongyi's house. In fact, I met Chief Shou for the second time. Scholars are here to stir up trouble, so it was inappropriate to greet Chief Shou at that time. Jiang Shangzhen looked embarrassed. Okay, hard work. At the time of parting, Qin Pingon said with a heartfelt smile, Chairman Zhou, a clone of mine will come to you soon, and he will take you and Su Jiaoqie to the mouth of the well. The well is left by the old temple master. No accident, you can enter the Mirage city of the Daquan dynasty through this road. If it is a road of mutual exchange like returning to the ruins, you can return to the blessed land. If it is a one-way road, Chief Lao Zhou will walk by go to Yulindu in Yunyan country, help to preside over the overall situation there, and hand over a letter to Wen Yu personally. I have one thing to ask. If Wen Yu agrees, then Su Jiaoqie may need to use Han Yushu's vice Immortal. If Wen Yu thinks it's inappropriate, forget it, don't force it. If it is normal, Jiang Shangzhen will definitely not refuse this kind of glamorous event of traveling the rivers and lakes hand in hand with beauties. Frowning his brows means that Chief Shou is sabotage and ignorant. It's just how Jiang Shangzhen sees Su Jiaoqie's permeation. What kind of red sleeves add fragrance? The woman in front of him is much scarier than the mountain wild ghost. But after all, it is the job of the chief priest. Jiang Shangzhen has no reason not to make a trip Mirage City and Yulindu. When Qin Pingon in white disappeared out of thin air, Su Jiaoqie obviously also got the instruction of the mountain master, and he clasped fists with Chief Shou. The old Jianghu, who was groping around among the flowers, knew that she used some kind of secret technique to seduce people's hearts, so in the eyes of others she was like a newlywed bride who looked at her beautifully, and would hesitate to talk to everyone she met. As one of the avatars of Daoists after leaving the sect where Xiao Xingfu puppet belonged, and went to the four corners of the lotus root blessed land, he successively found 4 native sword cultivators who had just been born, moved them with reason and affection, and finally succeeded after convincing 2 of them, they are willing to go to Tianwai, to see the scenery of the outside world. Qin Pingon made a gentleman's agreement with them. Before making a decision, you must go to Luapa Mountain or Fox Country to say hello. One is a noble lady from a certain boudoir in Jiangyi County, Nanyuan Country. She is obsessed with frontier poems and soared celestial beings in books. Her wishes come true and her dreams come true. Earlier she threw a bright red dagger from her palm. One is a bearded hero who rides a donkey's back and walks mountains and rivers with a sword. He drank heavily on the donkey's back, swayed and gave a breath of alcohol to the bumps, and it turned out to be a jet black sword pill. The woman's name is Mai Qing. She was worried about a marriage arranged by her parents, and she was happy to go out to relax, so she left a letter and sneaked out. The hero's name is Gushu Longsheng, a general of his family for generations. He used to be a border military general in the former Northern Jin dynasty. He had a bad relationship with the new emperor Tang Tie, so he simply resigned and traveled far away. Previously, one person rode a donkey and the other person stood by to guard against the wind. They talked about speculation, and along the way they talked about how to change the current phenomenon of the mourning of various national studies. On the way there were questions and answers. White bowls and wooden basins, porcelain vases and pottery urns, can they really build the world and accommodate thousands of miles of rivers and mountains in a square inch? Can tortoise-shell yarrow, tiles and stones, can all tell good and bad luck and determine people's fate? Not necessarily. The woman with a stomach full of questions may have only asked one question because of her thin skin. There are only a handful of people out there who have attained the Tao like Xianxia. There are heaven and man outside the sky, and there are people outside the sky, and there are no more or less numbers of land gods and the like. As for the woman in the grassland outside the Great Wall, and the young Taoist priest in the Qianxia temple in Yuezhou of Songlai Kingdom, they declined the kindness of that Xianxia and chose to stay in their hometown. One person asked the son if he could get married. One person asked if he was a Taoist. This is called non-speculative half-sentence. Qin Pingon, one of the Taoists in the Blessed Land, used the fairy method of the sun and the moon in a pot, and sent the woman and the hero here, handed them over to Jiang Shangzhen and then returned to the sky. Dare to love this trip. Someone Jiang really has to cuddle up against the red and lean on the green in the battle of makeup. The mountain master understands me. As a result, when Mai Qing heard that the other party's name was Zhou Fei, she was so frightened that her face paled. How is that Xianxia different from the unscrupulous businessman who kidnapped a woman? Jiang Shangzhen had a draft for a long time. With a calm expression he explained with a smile that he only had the same name as Zhou Fei. In fact, he had a sworn feud with Zhou Thief of Chunchao Palace, so he deliberately changed his name to Zhou Fei in order to catch him out. He fought desperately with him and swore not to be a human being if he did not take revenge. Looking at the man in green shirt with a sad face but firm eyes, the woman who is not experienced in the world believed it. The bearded hero at the side frowned slightly. Did he jump when he met an immortal? Jiang Shangzhen sacrificed a talisman boat and took them to the address of the well pointed out by Qin Pingon. Mai Qing stretched out his hands to smash the white clouds beside the boat, and asked seemingly casually, "Are there many people like Qin Jianxian who practice Taoism in the outside world? Jiang Shangzhen is half a bucket of water on the mountain like me, let alone a genius. The ground material is not considered. There is a lot outside, but there are very few romantic figures like Qin Jianxian." Mai Qing remained calm, but she was full of slander in her heart. Look, the man's words are deceiving. Su Jiaoqia sat upright and said from the bottom of her heart, "Can I ask, how did Jiang Jianxian enter Luapa Mountain to be the chief priest?" Jiang Shangzhen's scalp was numb, and he really wanted to ask the girl, "How did you become such a virtuous person?" And he gave a perfunctory answer, "I hit it off with Qin Shanzhu. When I arrived at the unremarkable dry well in the countryside, there was a verdant sycamore leaf hovering over the mouth of the well. Gu Shulong took off the jug and took a sip of the wine. His life experience was wandering, and he really felt like a fallen leaf floating like a person who fell from a building. Jiang Shangzhen put away the talisman boat and jumped into the well first. Without Jiang Shangzhen's reminder, Su Jiaoqia squinted her eyes, held her breath, and it was obvious that she was the queen. Gu Shulong pinned the flagon on, jumped forward without hesitation, dazzled as if falling into an illusory place. All he could see were colorful fireflies flying fast. Just watched for a while, his body was not bad. The sword cultivator started to vomit, and felt that he had vomited bitter bile water. When his feet hit the ground, the man's figure was shaking, but he saw Zhou Fei, who was full of a grieved face, had untied his bun and was wiping the hair on his head. Stains. Gu Shulong smiled awkwardly. Zhou Fei smiled, and then the bearded hero was hit on the head with gold stars in his eyes, lying on the ground on the spot. The woman sitting on him hurriedly stood up, just now wanting to apologize a few words. He just bent down when he opened his mouth. Gu Shulong is worthy of being a battle-tested military commander. With a skillful roll, he avoided those hidden weapons. Jiang Shangzhen felt a little regretful. Su Jiaoqia floated to the ground and reached out to pat Mai Qing's back lightly. Dequan Jingshi Mirage City has arrived. The one guarding the well in the small courtyard here is a Taoist priest of Huju with a family. The temple master told him not to worry about anything, just wait here, but if someone ran out of the well and killed him casually, don't blame others, blame yourself for your bad life. As for the day when he can recover his free body, just wait and see when the time comes. Since idleness is also idleness, this young Taoist priest with a face like a crown of jade married a wife and had children here, and took a few concubines along the way. Anyway, idleness is idleness, fighting in rainy days and fighting in snowy days as expected of a Taoist priest who specializes in housework and has never lost. Since the bed is harmonious and the rain and dew are evenly exposed, the wives and concubines in the house naturally do not have to compete for favor. The young Taoist priest held the whisk in his hand, and stood cautiously under the eaves, not daring to go near the well, and asked doubtfully, "But old sovereign Jiang?" Jiang Shangzhen smiled and said, "How do you recognize me?" The Taoist priest with good looks is hesitant to speak. There was an elder female crown in the teacher's gate, but she was murdered by Jiang thief. After returning to the mountain gate, she was very hurt. It is rumored that she often painted a portrait of a heartbroken person. Throw it into the brazier, burn the thief to ashes. Still not relieved, so I draw another picture and ask the maid to throw the scroll into the shared latrine cesspool. Almost scared out of the psychological shadow. The Taoist didn't dare to tell the truth and resentfully said, "The junior Lu Ying, whose Taoist name is Yushan, was born in the Yulan temple of Yihishan, and he admires old suzerain Jiang very much." Jiang Shangzhen hurriedly stood in front of the two women, pretending to be surprised. "You are Lu Yushan, so you are a big pervert?" Lu Yin, who was first sued by the villain, said helplessly, "The younger generation is just practicing the heresy of Huang Lao Qishuan. Such a superior art in the house, the dojo is above the bed and there is no lust. Men and women are in harmony and yin and yang complement each other. I believe that old sovereign Jiang is understandable." Jiang Shangzhen snorted a few times and said solemnly, "How can I understand it? I don't understand it and I don't accept it." Lu Xing then changed the subject. "What is the plan of old sovereign Jiang next? Is there any chance for this junior to do his best? Apart from letting myself lead the way and secretly sneaking into the palace to go to the dragon bed of His Majesty the Emperor, everything else is suitable and easy to talk about. After all, an orthodox nascent soul Daoist in today's Dequan dynasty and Tongyi's Hao, his words still have some weight." Jiang Shangzhen asked, "Can we return to the blessed land of lotus flowers through this well?" Lu Yin shook his head and said, "I've tried it and it definitely won't work." Jiang Shangzhen looked around and took a break from the heavy rain, then looked up at the sky. The sky was blue after the rain, and the sky was as clear as a wash. Jiang Shangzhen was also afraid of this notorious bastard, so he frightened the two big girls, sacrificed the amulet again, went straight to Yilindu in Yunyan Kingdom, and went to Wenyu to deliver the letter. When the talisman boat passed through the sea of clouds and went far away, Li stood still, and after a long time he gave a soft baw. "What, a dog Jiang thief still has the face to beat me up, saying that I am a pervert." Just when Lu Xing was about to turn around, a willow leaf appeared in the courtyard, like a drunkard, wandered to Lu Xing and finally stopped at the center of his eyebrows. Wild cranes have no food and the world is wide. Why do fellow Taoists have to imitate that literati and treat each other with respect? Jiang Thief's voice echoed in Lu Yun's ears. "You hurt my heart and am about to hurt your way." Lu Ying hurriedly made an apology to the head of the court. On the way to Yunyan country, another heavy rain seemed to come as promised. Jiang Shangzhen guessed that it meant taking a day off for 3 consecutive days. If the cycle was 3 times it would be over? Xianxia didn't have any extravagant hopes for the scattered Taoism of the patriarchs of the 3 religions. It's none of his business, just take a look. After all, Xianxia only asks about the 3 teachings, not to mention recognition. Although the rain is wide, it has nothing to do with me. If you miss this great opportunity, you will not be regretful. It is not in line with Zhang Shangzhen's heart. But if you want to say that you have no regrets, it is self-deception. If you knew it, you would have read a few more Taoist classics. Jiang Shangzhen is more curious now whether Qin Pingon can get something during this reign. It is better not to ask the mountain owner face to face, fearing that it will be superfluous, so he asked Cui Dongshan. But Cui Dongshan's reaction was very strange. It is said that Mr. went to extremes in order to retreat and break through the realm. There are only 2 situations. Either they can be integrated and melted into a furnace, which can make a huge profit, or they can cancel each other out and wear them out. There is nothing, and there is absolutely no third possibility of intermediate results. There is no cloud and rain, the sky and the earth are dark. Fuzhou is like a fish floating in the air. Gushu Longshang and Mai Qing have opened their eyes. Fuzhou is like an invisible big oil paper umbrella. After thousands of years, there are many melancholy guests in the world. If the sky is affectionate, the wind will move the heart and the rain will shed tears. Jiang Shangzhen took out a pot of wine and a few porcelain cups. Su Jiaoqia said that she never drank alcohol, she was afraid of making mistakes. Gu Shilongshan was an alcoholic who would lose half his life if he didn't drink for a day. Of course he wouldn't be with this, and Chunchao brother Zhou Fei, who has a life and death vengeance for the prostitute in Guangzhou, was polite and took the imitation flower cup. Jiang Shangzhen helped to fill a cup of fairy wine, and the bearded man raised his head and drank it all. Fei simply asked for a jug of wine, drank it himself, applauded loudly, put the wine jug at his feet, held the glass in one hand and sang loudly while hitting the bar with the other. Mai Qing has never drank alcohol in her life. She just felt that since she ran away from home and wandered the rivers and lakes, if she didn't drink alcohol it would be a bit outrageous. But she didn't know the severity and took a big gulp, choking the woman. His face was flushed instantly, and he only dared to take a small sip of the wine for the second time, and finally tasted it. Jiang Shangzhen smiled and praised, "Miss Qingqing is really a born child of the world." Jiang Shangzhen took out a stack of fake certificates from his sleeve, and gave 2 copies each to Gu Shilongshan and Mai Qing and explained, "To travel here you also need to pass the certificates." In the past, Qi practitioners didn't have to be so particular about it when they were outside. There are no taboos when traveling north and south, but now Tongyi's Hao is very strict. If a monk has no serious status, it is easy to go to the academy to drink tea and study. If you cancel the name on the certificate, I will write your real name for you on my own initiative. And the rest, Ben, you can fill in your aliases after you have decided on your aliases. Don't worry, the seals of the official governments and passes of various countries on the 2 pass certificates are genuine. Mai Qing opened the official seal, and there was a long series of folded pages spread out. She admired the official seals with different fonts and styles and exclaimed, "It's so beautiful, it's so beautiful." The woman made up her mind that she would collect 100 customs clearance seals in the future. Gu Shulong smiled and said, "Old sect master Jiang is really old." Jiang Shangzhen heard the strings and knew the elegance and said with a smile, "My real name is Jiang Shangzhen. I used to sit at the top of a sect and I was quite well known in Tongyi's Hao. I have no choice but to be disliked by the dog for 3 years, and I still can't convince the public. Well, it was given to a more suitable person to be the master of the house. That's why the Huoju Taoist priest who guarded the well called him the old suzerain. Fellow Daoist Yushan is cursing people around the bush. Helping each other is fate. You will call me in the future fellow Daoist Jiang, brother Jiang, big brother Jiang. You can do whatever you want." Jiang Shangzhen shifted his gaze and asked with a smile, "Miss Su, this trip to Tongyi's Hao, should I use the real name Su Jiaoqia?" Su Jiaoqia smiled and said, "If you want to learn from the hermit official and change your alias when you travel around the world, you should use Luo Wan." She didn't even know why she fell in love with the name Luo Wan, and the idea came to her naturally, like a person walking on the shore to enjoy the scenery, suddenly seeing a fish jumping out of the water. Whenever Mr. Yin Guan is mentioned, the nun's eyes are full of admiration. Jiang Shangzhen handed over a pass, smiled and said, "Luo Wan, it's a very good name. The material is exquisite, and the warp and weft are vertical and horizontal. Luo Wan's prosperity is extremely beautiful. The craftsmanship of the weavers is amazing." Jiang Shangzhen asked from the bottom of his heart, Miss Su, has Lord Qinshan told you the inside story of this trip to Yunyan Kingdom? Han Yushu's fairy slough is in Jiang Shangzhen's hands, and he has used it twice in the wild world, and it is just a glimpse in the eyes of others. Luo Wan nodded and said, Master Yingguan asked me to pretend to be the fairy surnamed Han, and go to Tianmu Academy to prove my innocence. I must play a good show with Wen Shanchong and try to give Sanshan Fudi a reassurance. Jiang Shangzhen was lazy, leaning against the railing of the boat, pinching the neck of the flagon with both fingers, shaking it gently, sighing for no reason that it was going to rain and she wanted to get married. The Mirage city of the Daquan dynasty, in addition to the snow-covered scenery in the Liuli realm, is recognized as a beautiful scene on the top and bottom of Tonggishao Mountain, and there are 100,000 peonies which are magnificent and beautiful. Another guest came to Lu Yes' residence. A young man in white clothes has a mole between his eyebrows, and a sapphire hairpin is pinned to his head, and a young man in Confucian shirts is pinned to his head with a white jade hairpin. The 2 jade hairpins were gifted by their husbands and were carefully carved. Each has an inscription in small script with 8 characters. Cui Dongshan's side is, Zhu Len Yuchu if the new one has not been touched. Chao Qinglang's side is, looking at it like it is and it is also warm. Now that Mr. has personally found out the deeply hidden Shao Xing, the blessed land is truly peaceful, and Cui Dongshan has already negotiated the price with those Qi practitioners in the blessed land. 9 times out of 10, they are all willing to bring their fellow disciples and family descendants back to their hometown of Tonggishao. As for the 1 or 2 who choose to stay, it's not that they don't want to return to their hometown, but that Cui Dongshan has opened up part of the formation prohibition. Let them experience for themselves what it means to be full of aura in a superior blessed land. As a result, those who left and those who stayed had to be paid. If you don't have enough money, you owe it first and then you can pay it back slowly. When you arrive at Tonggishao, Qingping Sword Sect guarantees that you won't ask for debts within 100 years, and the interest is not high so you don't have to rush to pay it off. The price is calculated according to the head and 1 person counts 1 person. Those with high current state and close blood relationship with the person in charge of the sect will have a higher price, and those direct disciples who can expect great success and have good roots, if they receive less money the price will be higher. If you set it low, wouldn't it be the same as looking down on your future achievements? Can you proud sons of heaven bear this kind of insult? As for the fugitives who are ordinary masters, let's not talk about money. If Cui Dongshan dared to speak out against his conscience, he would be worried that his leg would be broken by his husband. Cui Dongshan still does things vigorously and resolutely. Since there is an extra passage between the Lotus Root blessed land and the Daquan dynasty out of thin air, don't waste it. On this matter he and his husband have the same ideas, and the old Guanju will never keep this road for a long time, maybe it will be taken away. Taking advantage of Xiaomo's reminiscing about the past with the old temple master, let the Qi practitioners from other places in the Lotus Root Paradise leave as soon as possible, so that the matter of moving the umbrella will be easier. Otherwise, the next time Xiago travels across continents with a tongue leaf umbrella that hides the entire blessed land, it will need to consume Xiago's huge reserve of spiritual energy. If not, with Qin Ping's consistent style, Xiaomo, Jiang Shangzhen and Cui Dongshan would have returned to Tongya Island with umbrellas. In the world of avenues, this is more difficult than moving mountains in the ordinary sense. In addition, during the long journey, this oil paper umbrella, which is destined to be unable to be put aside in the mansion of natal Qi by means of the Immortal family, will not be said to be damaged if any turbulence occurs, but it will only be shaken violently a few times. It is a natural disaster with unpredictable consequences. Therefore Qin Pingan couldn't help being careful and careful. When Xiao Mo returns to Luopa Mountain from Qingming Tianxia, it is estimated that Xiago can also return to Haoran Tianxiao from Shirwan Dashan, just in time for them to have a chance to be alone. As for whether Xiao Mo can keep his body like a jade, whether Xiago can make raw rice and cook mature rice, let them each rely on their own abilities. Zhou Xian noticed the commotion in the Jinko courtyard and rushed here. Either he didn't come, causing him to stay here for a year, or he came here in a swarm. Did you make an appointment? Although due to his duties he was constrained by his identity and was not allowed to leave the capital for a while, but Lu Yun was an old fairy in the Yuanying realm after all, and he was fairly well informed. He still knew about the changing situation of the outside world by purchasing landscapes and official mansion newspapers. Quite a few, so he immediately recognized the identity of the white-clothed boy Cui Dongshan, the first suzerain of Qingping sword sect, and the disciple of the young hermit official of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Lu Ying did not dare to take it lightly, and once again reported his identity to the two uninvited guests. Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "Qing Liang, you go to the palace to say hello to Yao Jinji, and explain why such a thing happened. If His Majesty the Emperor is willing to clean up the mess, come here to try your luck in pan for gold, and recruit a few to make up for it. The last class of offerings, the Dequan Yao family lacks thugs and these people lack money in their pockets. This is called a match made in heaven, hit it off." Chao Qinglang nodded with a smile, and after asking Lu Yin for passing by, he walked back and forth among the jade buildings with carved railings, walked out of the house and went to discuss the matter with Yao Jinji. Lu Yin was a little surprised, never thought that he was still a serious scholar. On the other side of the well-mouth of Fudi, there were a group of Fudi Qi practitioners who were invited to help Luopa Mountain lead the way and protect the road. Sun Wanyan was here to join in the fun. As a local monk, it was the first time Sun Wanyan saw so many Qi refiners. She sighed faintly. It turns out that Qi refiners are really worthless outside. Luo Fume, the direct disciple of Hugua Peixiang, is in charge of leading a group of fox nuns who are Yingying and Yanyan. It is rare for her to come out to breathe. In addition, it is a decree personally issued by Qin Yingguan of Luoluo Mountain. They dare not neglect in the slightest each of the well-dressed fox charm nuns, like the female scribes in the palace, recorded the files of thousands of people in detail, their names, Taoist numbers, native places and landscape genealogy. The only strange thing is that the Lord Peixiang set a rule for them. In addition to their writing, those Tongis Hao Qi practitioners had to sit in a line and let them dictate the words and then let them write. In this way there are 2 files left on Fox Country. But isn't this just taking off your pants and farting? Luo Fume was like an inspection official, staring at those men and women of all ages with different expressions. In addition to Chao Ni, a swordsman who has just entered the Golden Body, there are 2 talented young warriors, Yuan Huang and Wu Jiang. They are all ready to go outside to learn more. Yuan Huang was also sitting in the pile of fans, helping to record the customs clearance essay. Holding the knife in both hands, Wu Jiang sat behind the table, seemingly having nothing to do, but actually feasting his eyes. There is also a female master He Qizhou from Jiangzhou Songlai Kingdom, and an old martial artist who is said to be the sword sharpener Lu Zong. However, he did not participate in the discussion in the Big Wood Temple. Apart from the fighting between the masters, the old man was not interested in these verbal quarrels or the work of fighting for power and profit. This time when the old man got the news, he rushed here without saying a word, and wanted to get out of this world to see his master and his old man. The heart of a cultivator is heaven and earth. It's not strange if it's strange. On the top of the mountain where the flowers are colorful and the green bamboos are thousands of poles, the drinker in Tsing-yi taps the white bowl with his fingers, and the ding-ding-dong-dong is crisp and sweet. How do you say it? The devil in white smiled and said, "What's the problem? What can I say? And what can I say?" The monk and the heart demon are enemies of each other, enemies facing each other. A Taoist cleans up demons like school books, and school books are like sweeping fallen leaves in the heart, swirling and sweeping, falling leaves flutter and raise dust, swirling and swirling. Then let's discuss it. Why don't we both take a step back and we'll be fine? The demon in white sighed heavily when he heard the words, put his hands into his sleeves and looked up at the sky. You and I know very well, Qin Pingon is not Wu Shuangjiang. How can we strip out the demon? There is nothing difficult in the world. If there is a heart, there is no way, and there is always a way. I can't think of it. What's the price? It doesn't matter if you can't think of it as long as you sincerely agree with a certain method. As for the price, you can get a certain degree of freedom similar to a monk Yinshan. It sounds disingenuous. It's actually very sincere. The devil in white smiled and said, if we say 1,000 words and 10,000, why should we deceive ourselves and others? I actually trust your method. Maybe if it is replaced by a heart devil other than mine, they will think it is good, so I probably just nodded and agreed. It's a pity. The drinker in the green shirt sighed. The me we used to be is so stubborn. That's right, without you there would be no us and we would not have reached the height we are today. Qin Ping's real demon is the former Qin Pingon. To be precise, it is the child who likes to deny himself. At this moment, another piece of Qin Pingan's mind appeared on the top of the mountain. In a sense he was the real body. He had removed the blindfold, wore a bright red robe, held a sword in both hands and stationed himself with the sword. Qin Pingon sat on the ground with his long sword across his knees. His face and figure were blurred and he turned his head to look at them. One was his former self and the other was his pure self. He smiled and waved to them. The green-clothed man with a pair of pure golden eyes walked to Qin Pingan's side first, squatted on the ground, reached out and grabbed a handful of soil, and rubbed it gently in the palm of his hand. And the innocent man in white clothes, who seemed to be spotless, hesitated for a moment, then stood up from the table, walked over there, turned into a boy and then turned into a child. Without any words, the real Qin Pingon, who symbolizes complex human nature, and Qin Pingon, who symbolizes divinity, both give up some positions. Let the timid child who looks at the world with suspicion, fear and longing eyes, let the child feel better. Sitting in the middle, they seemed to be silently protecting the child who hadn't grown up yet. The child was sitting on the ground with a basket behind him. There was only a thin layer of herbs in the basket. The child gently hugged his knees, wondering what he was thinking. Qin Pingon, who was in bright red robes, said hoarsely, "Because I know that it will be harder when I grow up, so I don't want to grow up and become the me I am now." Qin Pingon, who was wearing a green shirt and a jade hairpin, let out a hey and said with a smile, "It turns out that we were also little slobs who couldn't bear the slightest bit of hardship. After so many years we almost forgot." Qin Pingon, who stretched out his hand to hold the scabbard, murmured, "Is there any way after all? I can't go back to before the age of 5. Hearing this, the child finally said timidly, "Yes, just walk back. You can see your parents, you can see them clearly, you don't have to remember their faces anymore, and you can hear what they said clearly." "What?" Speaking of which, the child has put on a pair of age-appropriate shoes, which is the only old item that the orphans in Mud Bottle Lane did not exchange for food with their peers. Maybe it is because they are really reluctant, or maybe others don't want it. No matter what the reason was, he stayed in the family in the ancestral house after all. The child said aggrievedly, "It's not that you can't go back, you just can't bear to part with everything you have now. You don't even want your parents. I don't want to become a person like you." The divine Qin Pingon in the green shirt took off the jade hairpin pinned in the bun with his right hand, as if gently blowing on the inscription on it, stretched out his left hand to gently touch the child's head, and said sadly, "Little fool, fake after all, it is a lie. It turns out that I was not so considerate at the beginning, and it seems wrong. I like to compete with myself the most." The child stared blankly at the scene outside the mountain in front of him. The wind and rain were boundless and it was pitch black and he couldn't see his fingers. The real Qin Ping raised one hand, removed it from the scabbard and beat on his heart lightly, like knocking on a door. The immature-faced child listened with pricked ears. It turned out that they were located on an upside-down mountain in the world of mind, with the top of the mountain facing down, facing the piles of bones on the land of mind. The tearful child stood up, carried the basket on his back, wiped away his tears, held the rope in front of him tightly, and turned his head to look at the man who was neither human nor ghost. The child sobbed slightly and grinned as if embolden yourself, "I'm not afraid of ghosts." The divine Qin Pingon twisted his wrist, handed the child a bunch of candied haws and said with a smile, "The smaller ones taste better." The real Qin Pingon seemed to be frowning, not daring to look at the child. The child hesitated for a moment, got up and picked up the basket, stood on tiptoe and patted his head lightly as if apologizing to him, comforting him or saying goodbye silently. At the same time, millions of Qin Pingon skeletons fell down one after another, like a heavy snowfall. The child walked into the snow wearing small warm shoes and carrying a big and heavy basket. Sword of Coming Chapter 1208. Chapter 1208. It rained heavily for 3 consecutive days and took a break for 1 day. The mountains, rivers and earth of the world seemed to be drinking. On the top of the hill that used to be called Baiyue, and is now called Qiyun Mountain, Gukan rested here temporarily and Fei Jian sent a message to Lu Qiqing, who likes to ostentatiously to discuss something, so come here to talk about it. As soon as the flattered Lu Qiqing received the letter, he hurriedly set off from the Xianxia Inn in Chuzhou City without delay. Before leaving, Pavilion Master Lu specially put on the pink Daoist robe again. "Give support to my nephew so as not to look shabby to outsiders and lose Gukan's face. I never thought of that feng shui-shaped place called Qiyun Mountain." Apart from Gukan, there was only the maid who was kidnapped from the wild world. Standing together on the side of the mountainside cliff, Lu Qiqing was a little confused and fell from the clouds. and didn't dare to complain but couldn't help asking, "Gu Ken, I'm bored staying here, why don't you drink with my uncle?" Gu Ken said, "Someone wants to see you by name." Lu Qiqing sneered, "You're so arrogant, why don't you meet me by name?" Gu Ken suddenly cupped his hands to salute outside the cliff, lowered his head and said in a deep voice, "Gu Ken has seen the patriarch." Lu Qiqing turned around without raising his head and immediately knelt down on the ground and kowtowed. Disciple pays homage to master. After a while, Lu Qiqing, who only heard the barbaric female cultivator, covered her mouth and laughed coquettishly, realized that she had been tricked by Gu Ken, a bastard. Lu Qiqing was not angry either. At this moment there was a rustling sound behind him and Lu Qiqing mistook Gu Ken for mischief again and said with an angry smile, "Almost enough, no matter how good my temper is, there is a limit." Immediately afterwards Lu Qiqing was kicked and scolded in an extremely familiar voice. "It's a disgraceful thing, you still have the face to run to Luapa Mountain? Why don't you just engrave a line of golden characters on it every day wearing such a coquettish bag? On the forehead just engrave my brother as Jing Juzhong?" Turning around, Lu Qiqing saw the majestic old man. Lu Qiqing's lips moved slightly, his eyes were flushed and he fell down again trembling with tears. "Master." Wearing a green shirt and a long coat, it was Qin Qinglu who had nothing to do. Beside him was a disheveled, barefoot Taoist priest with nothing left but an umbrella slung across his back. The two old friends who have known each other for a long time made an appointment to meet here. Qin Qinglu lifted the toe of his shoe and landed on the ground again. "Get up, respect the master and respect the way and the realm of cultivation. It will be great if you two brothers can even out." Lu Qiqing stood up, turned his head to wipe away his tears. He couldn't help himself, he really had to think about it, since he was suppressed by the great master of Longhu Mountain on Aquarius continent thousands of years ago. After he escaped from the trap, not counting today, he only saw the face of the master. As for why senior brother Jing didn't save him, the senior brother must have his own reasons. Why the master was unwilling to break through the restriction with a sword while he was clearly in Aquarius continent. Presumably the master had some difficulties. Lu Qiqing really had no complaints at all. Qin Qinglu introduced to the Taoist priests around him in a slightly sarcastic tone. "Fellow Daoist Xiqing, this is my proud disciple Lu Daochun, the Lord Lu Pavilion of Baidi City, seems to have changed his name to Lu Qiqing now. It is the other laugh at me for being too stupid, and I laugh at Pavilion Master Lu who has no senior brother." The slovenly Taoist said with a smile, "There are countless deeds and I have been famous for a long time. It's not a sword cultivator who dares to run rampant on the master of Shenzhou in the middle of the earth just because of the jade." Qin Qinglu smiled and introduced the sloppy Taoist priest beside him. This fellow Taoist Xiqing, whose common surname is Gu, calls himself Taoist Sanbaiqian, and is nicknamed Huainan, the kind of half-hermit who seeks fame. He had several dojos in his early years. The most famous one was the Yulong Palace. The less famous one was Xujiang Wenbi Peak, and the other one was later occupied by scholars. "I can't grab it back. My relationship is okay, can it be counted?" The barefoot Taoist priest with an umbrella smiled and said, "Half a friend." Gu Ken intentionally or unintentionally glanced at the Taoist priest's shoulder. Lu Qiqing was like falling into the clouds. "It is also the Jade Roar realm and the judges will be judged." Gu Ken shook his head. Gu Ken and Baidi City met Gu Xianjun. Lu Qiqing stepped aside and stood beside the master, not knowing how to speak properly until Gu Ken said something like this. Lu Qiqing followed suit. The Taoist priest surnamed Gu with the Taoist name Xiqing looked at Gu Ken, nodded in approval and said, "Scholars must be like this in order to practice Taoism and obtain the Dharma." Qin Qinglu glanced at the savage nun. The old man frowned slightly, and she left immediately without daring to say a word. The 14th realm is the 14th realm. Even if the 14 realms of Taoism have their own advantages and disadvantages, and the methods have their own advantages and disadvantages, but that is only a matter between the 14 realms. The dragon slayer in front of me, who used his swordsmanship to overwhelm the world's water descendants, has been missing for 3,000 years. When he officially appeared for the first time, he once said, "Kill whoever is not who, no one thinks that is not true." "Big talk, empty talk," Qin Qinglu said with a smile. "Fellow Taoist Xiqing, we haven't seen each other for a long time. Someone said you appeared in Zhongyue. I wouldn't even know you were wandering around Aquarius Island." The Taoist said with a smile, "It's just because the master ordered me to go and see Wei Shidi." Qin Qinglu said with a smile, Wei Benyuan from Taoya Lane, this stinky old man, finally remembered the past? The Taoist nodded and said, it's mainly due to the 2 talismans that Li Shixing gave to junior brother Wei. Qin Qinglu gloated and said, you can't blame others. If you want to blame, you can blame him for his high-mindedness. It's not good to quarrel with anyone. If you have to go to Zhou Zi to wrestle your wrists, especially the content of the discussion is the 5 elements. The Taoist smiled wryly and was speechless. This junior brother Wei is extremely talented, and it is normal for him to be high-spirited. Besides, senior brother Wei is just an anonymous disciple of the master, and he is never allowed to enter the house to become a direct successor, so he wants to prove himself to the master more than anyone else. Qin Qinglu laughed and said, when I entered the town, Wei Benyuan had already left Taoya Lane. Otherwise I would have come to ask him for advice and asked him what he thought back then and why his head was so hard. The Taoist priest coughed, reminding your disciples and retransmitter disciples are here. Don't be so outspoken. Qin Qinglu smiled and said, a foolish one only knows to respect the teacher and has no other advantages. The other is lawless and deviant. Sooner or later he will deceive the teacher and destroy the ancestors. I have nothing to pretend. Lu Qiqing was full of pride. Guqin looked calm. The Taoist hesitated for a moment and said, I heard that Daoist Qin is very close to Luopa Mountain? Qin Qinglu hummed, part of it is that Mr. Qi blocked all the counterattacks of heaven. I owe him a favor and I have to show it. The other part is that there is a good friend in Luluo Mountain. If you don't go to him for a drink, it's useless. The Taoist nodded, I see. In the eyes of ordinary Qi practitioners, the battle of killing the dragon has already ended. But in the eyes of this Taoist surnamed Gu, Qin Qinglu only killed more than half of it back then. When Wang Zhu appeared, she gradually condensed the luck of the real dragon in the world. If Qi Jingchun hadn't taken care of all the causes and effects, there should have been a scene where luck counterattacked, as if she had returned a sword with Qin Qinglu, and it was inevitable. It's not that Qin Qinglu can't catch it, but it will be more troublesome. It's not as refreshing as it is now. You just need to stand by and wait quietly for the second real dragon besides Wang Zhu to appear. Qin Qinglu lifted a shoe, stepped on a rock by the cliff, gently rubbed off the yellow mud on the sole, squinted his eyes and said, the battle of killing the dragon, the more difficult it is, the more difficult it is. The joys and sorrows here are not for outsiders. This statement is true. It was so difficult that Qin Qinglu had to stop his sword and rest for a while because at the last moment what he cut with the long sword in his hand was not a real dragon, but the luck of the whole world's dragons. That's why the group of Qi practitioners are crazy about picking up leaks. Every time a giant falls, there is a chance to accompany it. This is a rule on the mountain that existed in ancient times. In Zidongtian there are gradually 4 families and 10 surnames in the town, a total of more than 600 households, more than 30 dragon kills and mountains stretching to the west. Old Man Yang has a chessboard for the big exam surrounded by incense and fog. The Taoist exclaimed, half 100 miles is half 90. Guqin said, for the bushes to drive away the birds, for the abyss to drive away the fish. The Taoist snorted and asked with a smile, can this saying still be used like this? Guqin yelled again, it's the younger generation who made me laugh. Qin Qinglu asked, for so many years Bai Chong hasn't looked for you, senior brother, and then thought about asking Mr. Sanshan Jiuho for some lost ancient swordsmanship? The Taoist shook his head and said, junior brother Lu and junior brother Wang are generally high-minded. Since master refuses to take the initiative to see them, they will definitely not go to see master. Taoist priests once dug wells in Jingshan Mountain, Luzhou, Beiju and made alchemy. The local people made statues of gods to worship and burn incense. There was a beautifully carved white jade toad resting on the shoulder of the statue. Qin Qinglu explained to Guqin, Wei Benyuan's predecessor surnamed Wang Mingmin was a Taoist priest. Fellow Daoist Ziqing Lu Yu and the Fangs Hushan Qingjun who once held great power are all disciples of Mr. Sanshan Jiuho. There is no distinction between registered and anonymous. Among them Wang Min, I guess, followed his master into the Lizhu cave, and the method of trapping the dragon was probably his master's idea. It was Wang Min who actually set up the formation. The reward is the fairy tomb. Otherwise I can't think of any other reason why an outsider can occupy most of the fairy tomb. Then he quarreled with Zhou Zi and lost, so there is now the old patriarch of the Wei family? The Taoist surnamed Gu sighed, except for the wrong order, everything else is correct. Junior brother Wang lost the discussion with Zhou Zi first, and then he went to the Lizhu cave to wade through the muddy water to help the master arrange the formation. Afterwards he disbanded on his own and was reincarnated again and again in the Lizhu cave. His mind became more and more muddled. Junior brother Wang could barely maintain a little bit of Dao seed true immortality, fluttering like a lantern in the wind. Qin Qinglu asked with a smile. According to the rules established by Qingtong Tianjun, the avenues in the town have been circulating and orderly for 3,000 years. Is there a process of constantly stripping, expelling and clearing the immortal seeds? The appearance of the natal porcelain is in order to weed out all the qi practitioners, the so-called cultivators, get rid of the chaff and save the chaff so that the temple can be rebuilt for the one who abdicates? Can the gods be invited to return to the throne if the immortals retire? When Qin Qinglu said the word green, the barefoot Taoist priest had already opened the umbrella behind his back to cover the sky and prevent the partition wall from having ears. So Lu Qiqing, who was so close at hand, couldn't hear what the master said at all. Normally Guqin couldn't hear it either, but Qin Qinglu did it intentionally. With together he lightly swiped to open a gap with sword energy. Deliberately leaked the secret so that Gu Can, an insider, could hear it clearly. The Taoist priest surnamed Gu looked serious and said from the bottom of his heart, "This truth is the result of senior brother Qingjun deducing it a few years ago." Qin Qinglu smiled strangely. "It's a done deal, so what's the point of deducing it? The established facts are right in front of you, and what's the point of wasting your merit and moral energy in vain?" The Taoist surnamed Gu sighed. "Taoists seek the truth, it's their nature." Qin Qinglu laughed and said, "I don't know how many smart people have been busy in vain in the end. They are worthy of being the Eastern Prince, and they are worthy of being the ancestor of the male Earth Immortal." After a moment of silence, Qin Qinglu rarely showed a sorrowful and sentimental expression and said softly, "As expected of the first young boy Tianjun who became from the human race, he has worked hard and planned for thousands of years. This action can be sung and wept for." Qin Qinglu put away his thoughts and asked with a smile, "I'm really curious about the specific rules and regulations, which makes me extremely curious. Does your brother Qingjun have any clues, and has he ever deduced them together?" The Taoist smiled wryly and shook his head. "Brother made an analogy. The curtain is as heavy as a mountain, unattainable, then he is just a speck of dust on the road at the foot of the mountain, and it is a luxury to take a detour." Qin Qinglu nodded. "That's right, otherwise the Taoism of the patriarchs of the three teachings would not be a display. However, it can be seen from this that Mr. Sanshan Jiuho has his own ideas about the trend of this world, and there must be some kind of disagreement. Combined with Mr. Qi and Cui Chan's contribution to the flames, it is even more confusing for outsiders." The Taoist said with embarrassment, "I implore Qin Daoyu to be careful. Fellow Daoist, you are a loner, but poor Daoists have teachers and brothers." The Taoist surnamed Gu suddenly wondered, why does Qin Daoyu call Xiuhu by his first name, but Qi Jingchun respectfully calls him Mr. Qi? Qin Qinglu said with a smile, "The first person to find Taoist Jiaxing was that Mr. Qi. He invited us. We had a drink and we got along very well at the wine table. If you give me face, I will give you face. This is called Jianghu. What's more, Qi Jingchun gave herself a very high evaluation. The key is the other party's sincere words. When I was young, I used to look forward to the Jianghu very much, just because there was a swordsman in green clothes who only knew the surname Qin in the Jianghu." Qin Qinglu signaled that the Taoist priest could put away the Yunwo umbrella, turned to look at Lu Qiqing and asked, "Did you drink with fellow Taoist Jingqing when you arrived at Luopa Mountain?" Lu Qiqing was at a loss. That boy in Xingyi named Qin Lingjun, the nascent soul realm Shuijiao? Qin Qinglu stretched out his hand to hold the disciple's head. "In terms of seniority, if he calls you nephew, you have to nod." Guqin asked abruptly, "Master, according to what you said, is it fate that Qin Pingon can become the final winner, or is it a result of self-seeking?" Qin Qinglu raised his chin towards the Taoist priests, who were the best at fortune-telling. The Taoist said with a smile, "Blessed are those who ask for it." Guqin suddenly smiled brightly. Qin Qinglu had other things on his mind. Just because Qi Jingchun took the initiative to drink with him at the same table and said something strange like a prophecy. It's a pity that Emperor Bai did not open his blue eyes. Fortunately, there is Qingshan with Baisho who seems to be warm. The old poems are as light as goose yellow wine, and the new sorrows are as thick as the yellow river waterfall, as if they have not been touched. Qin Qinglu asked again, But Qi Jingchun only said to wait and see, raised the wine bowl to toast with him, and said with a smile that I will be the first to forgive the world and we will drink. After thinking about it, Chen Qinglu was still puzzled. That's why he took a rare trip to Baidi City, and then asked Zheng Juzhong, you don't have the same surname as me, do you? Zheng Juzhong immediately figured out the crux of the matter and said with a smile on the spot, since I am not the ancestor of Taoism, of course it is even more impossible to be Chen Pingon who has returned against the current. In a secluded place with beautiful mountains and clear waters outside Qingfeng City, a man with a foreign surname built a mansion here. Today a foreign guest with an unfamiliar face came. The person who opened the door was a graceful young maidservant. The middle-aged man took off his bamboo hat and said with a smile, my name is Lu Yu. I'm from the same town as you. I'm here to talk to Senior Brother Wei. The maid named Taoya asked in surprise, Brother Wei? Grandpa Wei, who has never accepted apprentices and never talked about the master's biography, since when did he have a junior? She didn't dare to open the door indiscriminately. The Su family of Qingfeng City had suspected that they were the accomplices of the theft in Hue Town all these years. What if a villain came? Grandpa Wei has been thanking guests behind closed doors for many years. The middle-aged man who claimed to be Lu Yu changed his words. I'm looking for Wei Benyuan, Taoist Boyong. I left the town earlier than you and now I am practicing in Beiju Luzhou. It is a small hill like incense. For the time being only 2 masters and apprentices. Taya, go help and report. If Wei Benyuan doesn't recognize Lu Yu, he'll go back home right away, which means that the time has not come and he'll come visit again next time. Taoya hesitated for a moment and told Immortal Master Lu to wait. She went to report the news to Grandpa Wei, who was busy making alchemy all year round. Wei Benyuan, who was sitting cross-legged on a futon in the alchemy furnace, opened his eyes. When the girl walked to the door, the old man had already got up and sighed softly. Sooner or later he would come to the door, but it was a few years earlier than expected. Bai Chong has come, and if he avoids seeing him again, there is indeed some suspicion of not thinking about the friendship of the same family. Wei Benyuan is indeed the Taoist name Boyong. But this Taoist name has not been used for many years and he only accidentally remembered it a few years ago. Back then the old man quietly left his hometown Lizidongshan, with only the peach buds that the old man had always regarded as his younger generation with him. He exchanged land with the Su family in Qingfeng City, and chose to settle down in this place where the Su family's ancestral business was located. This is Wei Benyuan, according to the instruction in a family letter in the early years, asking him to bring peach buds here and wait for the opportunity, which seems to be related to the Fox Kingdom. Facts have proved that the content of the family letter is true. Taoya has indeed obtained 2 blessings in the Fox country, a colorful silk belt that voluntarily recognized the owner, and a dry peach branch that the silk guides the owner to pick up in the deep mountains. The sender of the letter was the famous Qing Jun in ancient times, but the person who signed the letter was Jun Qing. I thought it was an ancestor who left his hometown in the early years. And Wei Benyuan's ability to embark on the path of practice in this life is also due to a letter from Patriarch Junqing, sent to Taoya Lane when he was young. Wei Benyuan didn't know the true identity of himself and the other party until he recovered his memory. Qing Jun of Fangzhou Mountain was once personally invited by Li Xing, and his seat is located in the respected Fangzhou Mountain. This land real person is in charge of the earthly cave, heaven and blessings and all the land immortals. Qing Jun is also one of the direct disciples of Mr. Sanshan Jiuho. He once left some footprints in Chiduan Mountain. As a reward for coordinating with Master to arrange the Dongtian Formation and the Jianjian Tower Archway, Qing Jun only received a dispensable symbolic reward. That is, he took a carp from Lizhu Dongtian, which is now Li Jin, the god of Okinawa River. Wei Benyuan personally went out to meet Bai Chong or Lu Yu, the earliest Falu Street, Lu Qing, the founding emperor of the Lu dynasty, and now the first person of Beiju Luzhou Sword Immortal. The old Taoist had a complicated expression and gave a salute. Bai Chong smiled and said, I've seen Senior Brother Wang. Real people don't show their faces and they don't show their faces. Both parties are unnamed disciples of Mr. Sanshan Jiuho, and both of them were in Lizhu Dongtian town, but few people know about this matter so far. In the old town there were quite a few people who liked to play chess. Many wealthy families in Falu Street and Taoya Lane liked to chat with each other, but there may only be 3 chessboard masters. In addition to the head of the Li family in Falu Street and Wei Benyuan in Taoya Lane, the town recognized the head of the big landlord Wei family, and the two old men with similar temperaments and irreversible relationships also had a hidden identity. He is a person who has achieved Taoism, and in the Lizhu cave, which is extremely unsuitable for cultivation, he has cultivated a golden core earth immortal in the past. As for the third expert, of course it is the gatekeeper Jing Dafeng. When Qin Ping sent letters to make money, he sent 2 letters to the Wei family at the corner of Taoya Lane. The old man even invited the young man to the house to rest and drink water, but the young man declined. Wei Benyuan also reminded Qin Pingon that he would sit under the locust tree in his free time, because he picked up locust leaves and branches and could take them home to prevent ants, insects, centipedes and other things. The young man silently remembered it in his heart, and bowed to the old man under the steps to express his thanks. In his hometown, Wei Benyuan often took Li Shixing to play chess together, presented him with a few chess books, and repeated those few lines of chess theory over and over again. The grandfathers of Li Shixing and Li Baoping favored talismans in the early years. When the Lizhu cave shattered and fell to the ground, the suppression of Dao practitioners disappeared, and the old man soon entered the nascent soul realm. And Wei Benyuan likes to make alchemy, but he still can't break the bottleneck of golden alchemy. Just in this paradise-like place, he continues to make alchemy for more than 20 years, and the old man is not in a hurry. Later, when Li Baoping traveled here, she visited Grandpa Wei and brought 2 pieces of talismans belonging to her elder brother Li Shixing, namely the Dandan talisman and the Naiwan talisman, both made of cyan Taoist talisman paper. The former is like a blessed place with a golden glow, while the latter is like a lotus altar surrounded by purple air. This is a kind of return gift to thank the old man for his help in protecting the way. Wei Benyuan can donate to the Peach Bud, who has a very good background, to help her successfully form the alchemy, and from then on she will enter the upper 5 realms and her journey will be smooth. Bai Chong glanced at Taoya, who was still kept in the dark. Senior brother Wei, it's a pity. A pun. That is to say, Taoya missed the blessing of the town, and did not stand out from the younger generation and become the winner with the biggest profit. Because according to the arrangement of the old man in the backyard of the Yang family pharmacy, among the younger generation of the town in the Jiazi exam, the Yaozu will definitely be able to occupy a place as if the woman in front of her, Taoya, is the most promising one. That is to say, Taoya's failure to enter the Fox country is equivalent to passing through the house and not entering, unable to restore the memory of her previous life, inheriting a broken Qingqiu ruins, and thus becoming the legitimate fox master of the world. The old Taoist looked open and unrestrained, stroked his beard and smiled and said, "There is nothing to regret. It is nothing more than a person with a heart who loses to a person with a heart, and the fat water does not flow to outsiders." Taoya was confused when she heard it, but before today she had only heard the term "a caring person" once and she remembered it deeply. I remember that time it was Grandpa Wei who said that she was a caring person, just like the boy who delivered the letter. Wei Benyuan smiled and said, "Fortune in the world has its size and it is the best if it is just right. Girl Taoya has today's good fortune, which is enough. In the future the level of success in the road will be high or low, just take one step at a time." Among the 3,000 words of the Taoist ancestor, there is a saying that, "the depth of virtue is better than that of a child." And Yaxing once said something like, "He who doesn't lose his innocence is called an adult." Bai Chong asked, "How did senior brother restore his memory?" Wei Benyuan smiled and said, "Alchemy in the mountains is nothing else. You will remember it when you practice it." Bai Chong couldn't help laughing. Meeting with brothers who came from the same line, how could he still be so alien? Wei Benyuan, the patriarch of the Wei family, is a small self. True self is the real person who attained Taoism in ancient times, whose real name is Wang Min and whose Taoist name is Boyang. Just like the blind Taoist Jia Xing, the coachman in vain, and the scholar Qin Zhuoliu, the 3 of them are all the ego of Qin Qinglu, the dragon slayer. But there are some differences between Wang Min and Qin Qinglu. A Taoist priest may be an ego, but he may be an adult. The true self of the real body may be a villain. As one of the unnamed disciples of Mr. Sanshan Jiuho, Taoist Wang Min. According to legend, this high-minded man who likes to observe the precepts and travel to the 5 capitals once went to sea to visit immortals in accordance with the decree of his master. It's just that he once had a discussion with Zhou Xian and lost. Wang Min, who was determined not to be limited by yin and yang and 5 elements, lost in a mess. Discussion on the top of the mountain may seem illusory, but it is actually far more dangerous than the seemingly desperate fighting between great monks. The price of losing that discussion was that the Taoist priest Wang Min had to stay in the Lizhu cave life after life as a prison. Wei Benyuan sighed. Actually, this journey is not in vain. In the rolling world of mortals, one cultivates the truth and submerges one's spirit, cultivates one's aspirations to nothingness, keeps simple and only follows the Tao. Bai Chong laughed and said, "Sure enough, refining alchemy and drawing talismans is not as good as practicing swords." Wei Benyuan stared and said, "Why are you talking to senior brother?" Bai Chong said, "It's all anonymous." Wei Benyuan asked, "Do you regret leaving your hometown back then?" Bai Chong shook his head and said, "Women are afraid of marrying the wrong man and men are afraid of entering the wrong profession. If you can't go to the gambling table, don't go." Wei Benyuan nodded and walked into the study with his white clothes. An unusually large table was covered with long bamboo strips, like a curled green snake. Bai Chong glanced at it and quickly realized the mystery. The bamboo blocks were almost identical in shape, but they were engraved with different numbers, ranging from 1 to 900. Bai Chong asked, "Why not arrange them in order from the beginning?" Taking a closer look, Bai Chong was finally sure that the numbers on the bamboo were chaotic and there was no pattern at all. Wei Benyuan stroked his beard and said solemnly, "This is a difficult problem that senior brother Qingjun set for me. There is only one reminder. Senior brother asked me why I occasionally feel that certain scenes seem familiar." Bai Chong thought for a moment, stared intently at the densely packed bamboo sticks on the table and said slowly, "Senior brother Qingjun means that the passage of the long river of time is not one way, so it is impossible to talk about flowing forward or backward. Assuming that each piece of bamboo is a certain me at a different moment, most people will think that today's me is the follow-up of yesterday's me, and tomorrow's me will be the successor of today's me. People who practice Taoism, even if they are a little more courageous, can't it is assumed that life is an upswing flipping the pages of the book. However, according to Brother Qingjun's explanation, the journey of life is completely disordered. The self of yesterday may be next to the self of the day after tomorrow. I am a neighbor in the day? It makes sense to not predict the prophet. What the sages call things have their beginnings and ends, and things have their beginnings and ends. We need to solve it. Firstly, past life, present life and future life, mingled together and scattered at the same time. Is it really the fate of impermanence? Then there is our memory." Wei Benyuan hurriedly interrupted Bai Chang's words and sighed sincerely, "The way of the sword is indeed a shortcut." Wu Yuan was the first county magistrate in the history of Huaihuang County, and the second serious official post besides the supervisor of kiln affairs. "I met a lot of soft nails with Taoye Lane and suffered a lot of embarrassment. It is only said that the Ministry of Rights of the Imperial Court once issued a secret official document to the county government, asking Wu Yuan to open up the old porcelain mountain in the territory into a Wunchong pavilion, and then convert the fairy tomb into a martial arts temple. The old porcelain mountain belongs to the Liu family on Fulu Street, and the Wei family occupies the largest area of the fairy tomb. As a result, Wu Yuan failed to accomplish these two things. This is also the reason why Wu Yuan left sadly. There could be many reasons. If you can't do it, you can't do it. You only look at the results. Therefore, the official's evaluation of Wu Yuan was extremely low in the Beijing inspection plan. Fu Yu once fought against the injustice of County Magistrate Wu, why the threshold here is higher than Ichi Lane and Cheer Street in the capital. Later, Yuan Jingding, who was as busy as spinning tops every day, and Chao Gingxin, the supervisor who claimed to be diligent and never greedy, and the two descendants of Shang's Huguo surnamed cooperated to pry open the monolithic 4 surnames and 10 clans, helped the court to really open up the situation here. Both of them started in the old Longzhou as the two peers in the officialdom. Now, in terms of official reputation they are on par, and in terms of official career they are both on the same level. The fun of the children in the small town is to listen to the old stories told by the old people in the shade of the old pagoda tree, which is like a big umbrella, and wait for the elders to lift the bamboo basket containing watermelon from the iron lock well all the way. Running across the stone arch bridge across the stream, the children have long been familiar with the rusty old sword, fishing on the back of the green bull with holes, or taking off their pants in summer, bare buttocks jump into the pool, go to the old porcelain mountain to pick and choose, and it will creak when you step on it. The broken words and portraits on the broken porcelain pieces are like talking or singing. Hide and seek in the alley, go to the fairy grave to fly paper kites, catch crickets, have snowball fights and build snowmen in winter, play house games like who will marry, and carry the sedan chair by hand. There were voices at the door calling for someone to eat, one after another. A little older, when the children gradually become teenagers and girls, teenagers with strength, or follow their parents to farm in the fields, but most of them will go to the dragon kiln outside the town as apprentices, and then become kiln workers, talented and good at craftsmanship. Okay, I'm going to keep going, and I hope to be the fire master of a dragon kiln. The salary will be doubled. The owner of the kiln may have to look at their faces. In a small town, this is a great prospect. About middle-aged age, if you accept apprentices and then accept apprentices after apprentices, you are probably an old man. And those girls carrying bamboo baskets to pick wild vegetables by the water may take off their embroidered shoes, and their smooth and white feet will step on a series of shallow footprints on the soft soil between the ridges of the field. Then one day they get married, they have their own children, they may go to school to study for a few years, and when they are young they will help work in the fields, herd cows, drive ducks, or go to the dragon kiln to feed the legendary emperor. Children burn porcelain. The 5 biggest opportunities on the small town's surface in the past are closely related to the theory of the 5 elements created by Zhou Xian, a yin and yang master in China. His Royal Highness Zhou Xian, the prince of the Yang Gao family in the Great Sui dynasty, got a golden carp with moral meaning, and a dragon king basket as a gift, obtained from Li Air, symbol of war. Zhao Yao on Fulu Street, a book boy next to Qi Jingchun, a former schoolteacher, has a clean offering from the study room, a wooden carved dragon-shaped paperweight. An ancestral thing is hard to touch. The little loach that Gukan kept in the water tank in Nipping Lane. It was obtained from Qin Pingon fishing in Tianlong Ditch and passed on to the little slug beside him. Wan Xiu's fire dragon bracelet. She came here by forging iron in her shop by the stream. The ponytailed girl in Tsing Yi. Every time she swung her arm and hammered it down, the sparks in the room suddenly sputtered, beautiful and magnificent, like a star map, finally condensed into a bright red bracelet in the shape of a dragon's tail, entrenched around the girl's wrist. It's like natural. The 4-legged snake in the courtyard of Song Jisun and his maid Jigui belonged to the one who took the initiative to go to Nipping Lane to confess to Song Jisun. It was born afraid of Wang Zhu and didn't dare to get close to the straw sandal boy next door, just because Wang Zhu was the last real dragon incarnation in the world, and Qin Pingon was the one who made a secret bond with him, so it naturally didn't dare to do anything wrong. Later in Shujian Lake, the water flood Tanxue, who grew up from the little loach, was afraid of Qin Pingon. She was her first owner, but she didn't have time to go to the ancestral house in Nipping Lane to settle down, and failed to complete a formal cut-off ceremony like signing a monogram on the land deed, and was soon given to Gukan. Secondly, she is very clear about Qin Ping's position in the heart of her master, Gukan, but the most important thing is that Qin Ping signed an equal contract with the real Dragon King Zhu, and provoking Qin Ping is provoking Wang Zhu. Tanxue of the dragon genus naturally did not dare to offend. And Qin Pingon, whose life was as thin as paper and could not keep his luck, was able to catch this loach, and it was related to the box of rouge buried in the alley outside the ancestral house, so he was close to water. Metal, wood, water, fire, and earth not only generate each other but also restrain each other, and each has its own assistance and victory. But when they got the 5 biggest blessings on the table, the 5 of them completely lost the possibility of becoming that half of one. There is no thickness in the cycle of the way of heaven, and it is impossible for anyone to get the advantage and take advantage of it. This is one of the lowest rules established by Old Man Yang of the pharmacy. In addition, almost every young generation in a small town has a different method of ups and downs and odds. For example, Hu Feng, his grandfather was Kai Dao Huang, who opened a wedding shop, and the owner of the matchmaking shop, who used to be in charge of marriages all over the world. Because Kai Dao Huang is one of the surviving gods, he may be one of the first to be aware of Qing Tong Tianjin's plan. Under the premise of not overstepping the rules and not offending one of the 12 high-ranking gods, Kai Dao Huang tried his best to let Hu Feng take the lead and plan for his descendants Dao Yang. Kai Dao Huang told Hu Feng repeatedly when his grandson was young, not to allow Hu Feng to pick up money on the ground, not to beg for help in case of trouble, to beg for help and to pay off favors as soon as possible, or even better to pay more. But you can ask for more happy money. For example, on the way to get married, you can stop the road to ask for a red envelope, but don't forget to say a few auspicious words, be kind to others and make good karma. If the neighbors in the neighborhood have funeral affairs, they will help them. If they need someone to keep watch, the old man will let Hu Feng stay in the mourning hall overnight. You must not give up halfway, otherwise it is better not to help and not to enter the mourning hall in the first place. On a certain day every year the old man would take Hu Feng to kowtow to the immortal tomb. There is no thunder, no wind or rain. But the old man didn't know that when Hu Feng got the cicada slew and put it in his pocket, Hu Feng had already left the gambling table from that moment on. Before that, Hu Feng's incense was already high enough and he was among the top 3. If he could advance step by step, Hu Feng was very likely to reach the top. Zhu Lu of the Li family on Fulu Street actually had a great first move advantage, but at a certain moment she lost all the bets to Li Baozhen. Tao Ya, the maidservant of the Wei family in Tao Leaf Lane, has been steadily raising her stakes. When a certain Lu family member almost killed Lu Xianyang in a strange alley, his incense was extremely high. The kiln fires at the mouths of 36 dragon kills. An old China mountain. Peach trees on both sides of Peach Leaf Lane. Longxi River and Tiefu River. As for the archway building commonly known as Crab Square, it is actually one of the 9 towers in Xianxia, the real sword building. The mountain range is winding and in the end it looks like a dragon and the torso cannot be stretched. The dragon riding alley is located on the top of the steps, and there are 2 small pools not far from each other. The old man in the town said it was a pair of longan eyes. According to this statement, the dragon riding alley with 122 steps is the neck of the dragon was cut off, and the street next to the pool is called the stove tip by the people. Baoshi Kiln, one of the dragon kills outside the town, the master of the kiln is Yao. I don't know his name and he has no relatives in the town. On the contrary, he became an apprentice earlier than the boy from Nipping Lane who went to Yaoko first, and Qin Pingon was not able to fall into the eyes of old man Yao in the end. He was always an apprentice, not a disciple who entered the house. Master Yao, pharmacist Buddha. East Aquarius continent, the leader of the Oriental pure glass world. Whether it is clay sculpture or casting, whether it is painted with gold or not, it is very important to open the face. In addition to this, there is also the emphasis on placing gold, silver, scriptures, etc. in the statue or writing supporters. There was an orphan in Nipping Lane who used to go to the fairy graves and kowtow to the 3 statues of bodhisattvas. This child went up to the mountain to collect herbs with a basket on his back, and wore out a pair of cheap straw sandals that he woven by himself. Back then, the child who suffered from blind eyes and gossip poked his spine every day, only thought that bodhisattvas were easy to find, but herbs were hard to find on the mountain. Many years later, everything has come to light. There was a middle-aged monk who set foot here for the first time. He once saw the completely new world of the fairy cemetery. The Buddha sang and made endless wishes. Now on the desk on the first floor of the bamboo building at Jilling Peak in Luapa Mountain, there are several brushes of different materials, both porcelain and wood filled with bamboo bookmarks, and on each bamboo stick, engraved the beautiful words that the owner saw and heard during his travels. Those are the contents that the owner of this mountain sincerely approves, with simple truths, elegant poems and old sayings from hearsay. The small bookcase that Cui Qing left for Nuanshu was full of Buddhist classics, which is why the old man took Xiao Haitan to visit the Ahua blessed land together, and finally chose the Xinxiang temple in the capital of Nanyuan. The reason for resting is that the old man has sincerely devoted himself to the Buddha in his old age. In the southeast of the town, the fairy tomb where most of the gods were dilapidated and gradually blended with the soil in the past, the soil seemed to come and go. Later, the Dali court funded the construction of a high-standard martial arts temple. The 3 statues of the gods are inside the belly. There are both market copper coins and gold essence offering money. When Chao Qinglang returned to the house where the well was located, Cui Dongshan asked with a smile, "It's going well?" Chao Qinglang smiled and said, "His Majesty the Emperor agreed very readily, and she also asked me to send a message to senior sister Pei, to go and sit with her when I have time." Cui Dongshan asked an inconclusive question, which one is more difficult to be denied by others or recognized by others? Chao Qinglang thought for a while. If you add the word all, it will be very difficult. Cui Dongshan asked again, then remove the word all. Back then in the county town our husband and, for example Zhao Yao, both sides were unaware and no external personnel made any changes. Under the premise, one is recognized by more people and the other is rejected by more people, who is more difficult? Chao Qinglang thought about it for a moment and said, "It's still more difficult for Zhao Yao." Cui Dongshan nodded and gave a thumbs up. "It is indeed a clean stream of our desolate mountain gate style." Chao Qinglang asked suspiciously, "Why do you ask this, little brother?" Cui Dongshan curled his lips, didn't say anything, just muttered, cursing that the old is not a thing, so hard that he even lied to himself. Chao Qinglang is used to it. Cui Dongshan asked suddenly, "When did you recognize yourself, sir?" Chao Qinglang looked bewildered, shook his head and said, "How do you know about this kind of thing?" Cui Dongshan scratched his face imitating millet grains. How difficult it is to make an out-and-out pessimist optimistic, and let a habitual self-denial recognize himself. It's like going to heaven. In the old days on the side of Qingye Bay rocky cliff by the river, old man Yang in the backyard of the pharmacy who seldom went out, and the young man in white who shared the soul with the embroidered tiger Cui Chan had an open and honest conversation. It seems that the status, realm and family background belonged to the national teacher Cui Chan, who is the master. The boy in white who had not named himself Cui Dongshan at that time was the assistant. This means that Cui Chan's mental cultivation and calculation strength on the chessboard must be much higher than that of the boy in white, so that's right. But old man Yang asked a very interesting question at that time. "Cui Chan in the capital doesn't know?" The boy in white gave a more sincere answer. "I probably don't know about that. Regarding the spirit and soul, both of them are the masters of the masters. There are only a handful of great monks who are qualified to talk to them about this matter." Such a question and answer, in fact, Cui Chan has leaked a lot of secrets. It means that before that Cui Chan had already started to make arrangements, began to deceive himself and others, and deliberately suppressed his computing power to deceive the world. Otherwise he would not be able to fool the patriarchs of the three religions, nor win Haizhomi of the wild world. After that it was forced by the ruler of the old scholar. Cui Dongshan took Yu Lu and Xia like brown sugar, to recognize Mr. Chen Pingon as a faceless face. At the same time Cui Dongshan is unwilling to follow in the footsteps of the old and become a big brother, so he made an appointment with Pei Qian. "You will be your big sister and I will be my little brother, each has his own way." Xianxia Mountain, the ancestor of the Longquan sword sect and several direct disciples of Donggu, sensed the strange weather that was passing there, guessed the truth and rushed here from their own mountains full of joy, but they were hindered by their master's stubborn temper. "It's just a few words of congratulations. If you say too much it will make master unhappy." Wan Qiong walked out of the blacksmith shop, looking lofty and refined like a fairy, facing the congratulations from his disciples. The 5 short and strong men didn't say anything. Lu Xianying came from the Wai Peak. "Taijiang Wan, is this the fairyland?" Wan Qiong hummed. The disciple asked very casually, but the master answered lightly. After all, the style of Longquan Jianzong's family is very different from that of a certain mountain next door. Lu Xianying asked cautiously, "Master, what about the position of the suzerain?" Before taking the initiative to let the virtuous, it means that the master and the disciple are in the same realm. I guess Wan Blacksmith has a thin skin, and he has no face to continue squatting in the latrine without shitting. Wan Qiong said unhappily, "Continue to be your suzerain. When I feel that virtue is not worthy, I will give it to a certain jade realm." Being able to enter the immortal realm was due to a transaction. In the early years, Wan Qiong sent away his family's Zenlongjia in exchange for an ancient sword method related to forging. However, still limited by his own roots and savvy, Wan Qiong has only broken through the bottleneck of the Jade Roar realm now. Maybe Lu Xianying or Xieling would have broken through the bottleneck long ago. As for this secret swordsmanship, who Wan Qiong will teach it to in the future has already made plans. First to Su Xiaoqiao, then to Li Xinyuan. In short, it will fall on Zhu Haifeng. Lu Xianying immediately squinted at Xieling, hinting to this junior, "Don't be rebellious, be careful, senior brother suzerain will come to clean up the house." Xieling was a little flustered. He is now the only one in the Jade Roar realm in the sect, and he has no interest in being the suzerain, so he hurriedly said, "Senior brother Lu can cultivate more Li Xinyuan who cooks Haifeng. I think that young man has the title of suzerain posture." Wan Qiong nodded. That young man's aptitude is not bad, his disposition is very good, and he is worthy of entrusting him with great responsibility. Su Xiaoqiao is the current master of Zhu Haifeng. She smiled sweetly. She was really surprised. She never thought that the master would value the direct disciple she just accepted so much. Lu Xianying felt relieved, rubbed his hands together and said, "This is not a good table, let's rub it together." Wan Qiong began to issue the order to drive away the guests. With his hands behind his hands, he walked to the side of the cliff alone and said indifferently, "Well, wait until you serve the wine. Let's all go back." Remembering one incident, Wan Qiong slowed down without turning his head and said, "Since we have all moved out of Chuzhou Xianying, you should go back and inform the Dali court that the Qi trainer and martial artist don't have the sword talisman. The old rules of not being able to control the wind over the mountains and small towns should be withdrawn quickly, lest people gossip behind their backs and gossip, saying that the shallower the background of our Longquan sword sect, the bigger the heirs. No matter how poor the Longquan sword sect is, it's not enough to rely on a few sword talismans to make a living." Xia Ling didn't dare to touch bad luck and made up his mind not to get involved in this matter. Dong Gu and Su Xiaoqiao looked at each other, and they didn't dare to express their opinions. Now that the matter of casting sword symbols and sending them to Chuzhou government and Huaihuang county government is probably Su Xiaoqiao in charge. Lu Xianyang nodded, "I'll greet the Ministry of Rights and the Ministry of Punishment first, and then I will teach that boy Chen Pingan a lesson, reminding them to restrain themselves a bit, and overwhelm me and Longquan Jianzong's limelight, which has already aroused Master Wan's heart. I'm not happy anymore, let him take it easy." Xia Ling had a complicated look on his face. There are not many people who dare to tease Chen Shanzhu like this. Lu Xianying has a really big heart. Wan Qiong, who had already walked away, said with a smile, "The worship of Dali, regardless of whether it is the chief or the last, is under the supervision of the national teacher as usual. It is hard to say who will wear small shoes for whom." Lu Xianying was speechless. Blacksmith Wan, who couldn't beat a fart with a few sticks, can talk like this now. It seems that he is indeed holding his breath in his heart, which is not small. Looking at the figures of the disciples who left Xianxia Mountain with Yu Jian, Wan Qiong squatted by the cliff, and under the man's feet were the big characters written on the steep cliff. Wan Qiong's real big disciple was not actually Dong Gu, the first disciple of the Longquan sword sect, but a nascent soul realm cultivator who was still concentrating on practicing swordsmanship in Fengxue Temple. In fact, almost all of the disciples that Wan Qiong collected in Fengxue Temple in the early years were middle five monks. At that time, Wan Qiong hadn't voluntarily asked to go down the mountain to replace Qi Jingchun as the military master of the Lizhu Cave Heaven. Later, Wan Qiong felt that the trip out of the mountain was about to come, and the future was uncertain, so he didn't let them go down the mountain. Later, Wan Qiong broke away from the Fengxue Temple genealogy and established the Longquan sword sect in the old Longzhou boundary, but he still didn't let those disciples enter. Longquan sword sect. Wan Qiong always had a huge regret in his heart, just because among those disciples, there was a person whom he had placed high hopes on. This disciple was named Lu Jingzhuang, whose aptitude for cultivating Taoism was average, and he was very slow to break through in Fengxue Temple. But the young man's temperament is very good and he has an appetite for Wan Qiong, so good that Wan Qiong thinks that it is okay to let him be a close disciple. But in the end, this person not only severed the master-student relationship with Wan Qiong, but even broke away from the Fengxue Temple genealogy. Although Lu Jingzhuang is a military monk of the Fengxue Temple lineage, he works hard and bears the burden of hard work. He forges iron and swords with Wan Qiong and never complains. He likes to use yarrow for divination in his spare time. Later, Wan Qiong moved to the blacksmith shop in Lizhu Cave, and even the guys in the blacksmith shop were actually bought by Lu Jingzhuang piece by piece in his early years. But such a Qi trainer with the same bones and the most admired monk on Howren Mountain turned out to be Lu Qi, who was recognized as the first-class monk in Taoism, a genius among geniuses who turned Lu Jingjing into a place of retention. Wan Qiong has almost never regretted anything in his life of cultivating Taoism and casting swords. If he really cares about it, there are only two things. The first one is ignoring Lu Jingxuang's Taoism. According to the genealogical records of Fengxue Temple, Lu Jingxuang's ancestors can be traced back to the Lu family of the Xianxia Kingdom, which is the Xianxia Kingdom where Wei Bo was the king of Beiyue Mountain. Wan Qiong turned to look at Piyun Mountain. As the smallest continent in Howren, Aquarius continent has only one military general in the history of Zhongtu Martial Temple, but the time of accompanying him is very short. This person is Zhang Ping, the famous general of Xianxia Kingdom, who is now the city god of Chuzhou City God Temple Gao Ping. Zhang Ping and Wei Bo, who used to enjoy the incense of the world, accompanied the heroic spirits of the martial arts temple, but became the landlords of the Mantu Mountain near Hongzhou town, a majestic tiger, whose golden body was smashed and submerged, and then salvaged. However, the Duke of Tudi, who raised a part of the fragmented golden body and descended to Chiduan Mountain, sank like the fate of the Lu family of Xianxia Kingdom, and became a low-level subordinate in the officialdom of Xianxia. His former colleagues who could see each other with just a glance, really a pair of brothers and sisters. As the northern mountain of Dali Piyun Mountain governs the territory, including the Tiefu River. The first empress of the water who was conferred by the imperial court was Yang Hua, the court lady next to the greatly Empress Nanzan in the early years. She is now the Marquis of Chongchun of Chidu. Life is like the dust on the moor, and there are thousands of duckweeds in the poplar flowers. At that time the Xianxia country was prosperous in culture. Especially the name of the farewell poem moved the northern half of the continent, and it used things to express its ambitions. According to Xuan Jiezi, Yang and Lu are also raised. Wan Qiong is still not sure whether Yang Hua is the reincarnation of someone in the old Xianxia kingdom, nor does he know whether his disciple Lu Jingzhuang has any relationship with Yang Hua. Outside of sword casting, it was a mess. As Wan Qiong's favorite disciple deep in his heart, Lu Jingzhuang, after his brothers continued to improve their realm, especially when Wan Qiong himself entered the upper 5 realms, unconsciously Lu Jingzhuang, who was already at the bottom of his realm without warning in a certain time on the way to retreat, he went mad. If Wan Xiu didn't notice something was wrong and she came to rescue him, then senior brother Lu, who would change his mind as soon as he left the retreat, would make a big mistake and the consequences would be unimaginable. After that, Lu Jingzhuang, who thought he had no hope of practicing in this life, left Fengxue Temple sadly. Wan Qiong didn't stop him, because he knew he couldn't stop him. Later in the small town, Wan Qiong once explained to her daughter why she only let the teenagers in Nipping Lane do part-time work. The reason was that she didn't want her to see the second senior brother Lu. This is also the real reason why Wan Qiong was unwilling to accept Qin Pingon as a formal apprentice in the pawn shop. Wan Qiong occasionally wondered over the years, did she think a little less at that time if she was not afraid of making mistakes? Xiu would stay, and in the end, Li Lu would be the one who followed Zhoumi to the sky. Wan Qiong took out a jug of wine, which was a local brew bought from a small town in the early years. The unshaven man took a sip of the wine. I regret that I can't eat it as a meal, but I can drink it as a wine. Those 4 big characters are carved on the cliff. From top to bottom, it is the heavenly show. From bottom to top, it is the god of show who opens the sky. I remember that young Taoist priest who set up a fortune-telling stall once made a fortune-telling fortune for Xiu. The signature is an old saying that seems to be scheming. It is not the sky that opens people, but the sky that opens the sky. Those who open the sky will be born with virtue, and those who open the people will be born with thieves. Wan Qiong remembered the last time she ate at the same table with Xiu, and Xiu understated something, saying that she had seen senior brother Lu. Wan Qiong didn't ask much at that time. But later it was Wenhai Zhoumi and Wan Xiu who left hand in hand. There used to be 600 households in Huaihuang County, and the streets and alleys, big and small, crisscrossed. There are actually quite a few alleys that are narrower than the Nipping Alley. If you can take a shortcut, you will pass by this place. The 2 walls face each other, the eaves are low, the sun cannot reach, and there is no sky. Qin Pingon often visited this place when he was young, especially in the freezing winter when the dark alleys were frozen on the ground and no one was around. Qin Pingon would first put the bucket at the end of the alley, just like that. Pushing forward, he took a few steps back, rushed forward, slid sideways through the alley, and finally met the wooden barrel filled with water at the end of the alley. Later, Qin Pingon took Qin Lingjun for a walk in the town and passed by. There was a well at the entrance of the alley. There was a vegetable garden with poor soil beside the well, and they were chatting and walking. At that time, Qin Lingjun walked a dozen steps before he suddenly understood something. The master of the mountain actually stole vegetables from the vegetable garden when he was a child. Otherwise, how could the master of the mountain know the taste of those vegetables in the vegetable garden, which are astringent? And Qin Pingon didn't deny anything at the time, but just told the little boy in Tsing-yi not to spread rumors. It's like admitting that you did steal when you were a kid. Think back to those days. In the night, a black cat that wandered around Xinghua Lane all the year round was pitch black. It was hard to tell whether it was a domestic cat or a wild cat. It walked lightly and silently on the roof of the Yang family medicine store. It looked through the patio at the old man who was puffing in the backyard. Old man Yang said, "Fellow Taoist of Jitsi Temple, you are here, Why don't you come in and have a talk? You can't hide your words outside the courtyard. The black cat, which the old man called Jitsi Daoist, shook his head lightly, then nodded like a human being and jumped up, landing on the bench under the eaves. The old blind man from the barbaric 100,000 mountains contributed a lot in the Battle of Ascension to the sky. Because he was dissatisfied with the subsequent internal strife, he felt that the world that had turned upside down was not much better. He was extremely disappointed. As a monk of the human race, he chose to stay. In the wild world not far from the Great Wall of Sword Chi, I once cut off my own eyes and threw them into the vast mountains and rivers outside the wild world, turning into 2 wild cats, one black and one white, wandering in the world, watching the changes of the world coldly. However, the old blind man has not collected these 2 visions for 10,000 years. Too lazy to look directly, out of sight and out of mind. One of the black cats is now often by Ma Kexuan's side, and the other white cat was supposed to stay in Qingming Xianxia, but for some reason it ended up going to the Taoist temple in the East China Sea. The wild cat just came here from that alley, a skinny kid like black charcoal, stole some vegetables in the dark and returned to Claypot Alley. His feet were weak and sweat was profuse. Old Man Yang seemed to know what it saw and said calmly, "Finally, it has a bit of humanity." The wild cat squatted on the bench, combed its shiny fur with its paws, raised its head and stared blankly at the old man with its dark eyes. Old Man Yang just squinted at the ground scene in the courtyard. There were countless incense sticks, and each stick of incense was someone's incense stick in the town. The bottom of the well was covered with incense ash, layer upon layer, year after year. It's just that in the eyes of the black cat, there is nothing in the courtyard. It put down its paws, leaned against the bench and asked the old man who was in charge of the man in the world and the immortals ascended to heaven with his eyes. Qi Jingchun chose the book boy Zhao Yao? Not necessarily. Probably just the opposite. Not necessarily. Otherwise, why did Qi Jingchun start admonishing Zhao Yao early on, telling that child to pay attention to forming good relationships in ordinary places? Qi Jingchun knew that he couldn't break my rules and he didn't want to delve into this matter, for fear that it would be self-defeating, which would be unsightly. You picked this orphan from Mud Bottle Lane? No. Life is as thin as paper, he can't afford it and I can't afford it. Fellow Daoist Jitsi, believe it or not, since I taught him the breathing technique he has already left the gambling table with 1 foot. Is there a but? Yes, but God never abandons self-improvement. The gambling table I set up is not for monks to climb mountains. There are no requirements for qualifications and backgrounds, so there is no distinction between superiors and inferiors. In the courtyard in the sight of the old man, there is a stick of incense inserted in the pile of incense ash. The fire is flickering and the incense mist rises. Some incenses are about to burn out, but the incense mist is extremely low. Some incenses seem to have just been lit, but the incense mist is extremely low high, only a little distance from the mouth of the patio. Some incense mist disperses and cannot stay and falls into the rest of the incense. Some mist disperses but is not chaotic like a canopy, like a shelter from wind and rain, sheltering some incense with sparks that are slightly bright and half bright, and some cigarettes are it is condensed into a line, rising straight to a high place, and some incense sticks lean to the side, resisting the nearby incense sticks and are about to burn the latter. The scene is different and there are many. In the heavy rain, Song Jisun, who was returning to Nipping Lane, was blocked on the road, and a skinny and much shorter peer stretched out his hand to choke his neck. The tall boy leaned against the wall, powerless to resist. The straw sandal boy's eyes were red, his fingers were like hooks and he grabbed his neighbor's neck. He stared at Song Jisun, who lied to him to break his oath. In the heavy rain, there were tears on the faces of the 2 teenagers. One was hatred and anger, the other was fear and regret. At the entrance of the Baoshi kiln, the sissy who was in charge of watching the kiln fire one day sat alone on the bench when it rained heavily. This means that almost half a year's harvest at the Baoshi kiln mouth has been ruined. Master Yao and all the kiln workers will hate his dereliction of duty, and he will be held accountable by the officials of the kiln supervision and construction department afterwards. The cowardly man named Su Han, after poking out such a big basket, ran away in fright, and didn't dare to tell anyone that he kept hiding in the mountains, and the heavy rain hit his face and body bursts of life. It hurts like every drop of rain is a whiplash. The young and strong men at the entrance of the kiln were chasing after him, searching the mountains vigorously, and when the heavy rain stopped, they lit torches one by one. Lu Xianying was wearing a queer raincoat and a bamboo hat, and the tall boy was holding a torch. After holding back for a long time, he still couldn't hold back and said to the old man beside him, "Old man Yao, or just forget it." The old man Yao was walking on the muddy mountain road, leaving marks on his feet, and said something weird to the tall boy. "Forget it? What's the matter? It's on your head?" Lu Xianying grinned. "Yes, then I owe him and I will help him pay back the money in the future." After a moment of silence, Lu Xianying added, "I will return it with Qin Pingan. This is called sharing blessings and sufferings together. He is good at making money and Qin Pingan is good at saving money. I believe the two of them will be able to pay off this muddled debt. After all, it is a life." No matter how sloppy that sissy was, she even got a big slap from Lu Xianying, but after careful investigation, it seemed that she hadn't done anything harmful. With this posture tonight, if he is not caught, he will be beaten to death and knocked down? Old man Yao is notorious for denying his relatives and accepting death. The old man Yao said in a low voice with no expression on his face, "He asked for it all himself. People have come to pay their debts in this life, and there is no way to avoid it, so pay it off as soon as possible." Lu Xianying couldn't hear it clearly, but he probably heard it clearly. At that time the tall boy had a pure heart and he didn't take it to heart. In the dark night suddenly there was lightning and thunder. Su Han, who was in a state of turmoil, looked at the skinny young man who came out from behind the tree in a daze by the light that seemed to be given by God. The latter shook his head silently, stretched out his fingers. It seemed to show him a way out. Poor people who have no backbone like to despise people who are poorer than themselves, probably people like Su Han. But the person who let him go that night was the young man he liked to provoke and bully the most in his daily life. His surname was Qin. He was taciturn and he was a dull gourd who couldn't fight back. But the man was caught in the end and the sissy was tied back to Long Yao by Wawada. In fact, she was not beaten to death on the spot. It was said that her muscles and bones were injured for 100 days, let alone the person whose limbs were broken, lying on the bed for almost 100 days. There is a scene of half a year. Those kiln workers and apprentices who were supposed to take care of the sissies in turn regarded this job as hard work, and it didn't earn half a copper coin and it was tiring. It is really suffering, so they each find their own reasons or they don't find excuses at all and let Qin Pingan go to work. The result is that the two people in the kiln who looked at each other the most, one is lying on the hospital bed and the other is sitting on the bed. On the bench, each of them was silent like that and the two sides often didn't say a word. One stared blankly at the old window paper that no one would change without him. Helping to feed the sissy just like a dumb person, repeatedly practicing the drawing posture. Old man Yao went there once and asked Su Han if he had any grievances and if he wanted to leave Long Yao to make a living elsewhere. The sissy grinned, shook her head with difficulty and pulled the wound, uglier than a ghost. In fact, the sissy has a delicate mind and knows that if she doesn't suffer this beating, and if she doesn't beat him hard, the owner of the kiln mouth will definitely not be able to get around him. As for his low life, 100 times of death is not enough to pay for it. So old man Yao was helping him. Lu Xianying couldn't stand the smell, so he would sit on the threshold, scolding a sissy with a bunch of nasty words, and then calling Qin Pingan a bad person. Those who were lying or sitting in the room didn't reply and one of them didn't dare to follow. Lu Xianying quarreled, but one was indifferent. But as long as Lu Xianying is not at the door, the sissy's injury is a little better at first and she has a little energy and she will scold the sky in a low voice. The young man surnamed Qin was a lowly child with a father and no mother. Later he got tired of scolding and quarrels had to be scolded at each other to have fun, and it was really meaningless to be with a young man who never talked to him. Later the sissy gradually subsided. One time the sissy was really aggrieved, so I asked the boy, "What you thought? Why didn't you talk back? Are you really not angry, or did you say that you were used to being scolded by the neighbors because you were young and you didn't get scolded a few words? But feel uncomfortable all over?" The young man was silent for a long time with a dark face and then he said the truth. "When you recover from illness and one day you can go to work in the fields, I will give you a few big mouths, and I will not get rid of your stinky mouth full of dung. A few teeth, I will take your surname." The sissy who just survived the ghost gate smiled instead of anger. She laughed so badly that she probably pulled a wound, so she grinned. Later, sissy was able to get out of bed and walk, but she still needed to recover from her injuries. When a man goes out occasionally, it's always the weather when it's about to rain. When he meets a kiln worker on the road, when a sissy talks to someone, he still gets used to raising his orchid finger or stroking his temple hair. "I can't change eating shit," and teased a few words in person. Sissy used to be completely indifferent, But now she will look sad. Zhou Xian walks alone on the road, either slaps himself in the face or secretly stretches out his left hand and tightly holds his right hand. I don't know what I'm thinking. There was only one time when he and the boy from Mud Ping Lane could really be called chatting with each other, only once, about 10 sentences in a sissy manner, and the boy said at most one sentence. And from the beginning to the end, the young man only said one thing that could be regarded as a good thing, not guilty. He said that the sissy paper cutting is very beautiful. In the end, the sissy, who seemed to be in a good mood, asked the boy why he was the first to see him on the mountain, but he didn't report to Master Yao and the others. The thin boy's answer couldn't be more real. You are cowardly. If you were captured and beaten to death, even if you became a ghost, you would definitely not dare to seek revenge from others, but you would only seek me. The sissy laughed very happily, and when she finally stopped laughing, she first gave a hello, called the boy's name, and then asked a question, asking if this is a good person with no reward. The boy didn't talk to him. But on that day the sissy stabbed his neck with scissors and rolled up the quilt, as if hiding inside, not wanting others to see his ugly death. Anyway, he died quietly. On the day of Zhou Xian's death, the sun was shining brightly and the sky was cloudless. At that time, Qin Pingon couldn't really talk about being sentimental, but when he was holding Lu Xianyang to guard the sissy's spirit, the young man just couldn't understand two things. Since the sissy is so afraid of pain, why is she not afraid of death? How could such a cowardly person manage to poke a big hole in his own neck with a pair of scissors? A sissy is a dead word. But the words that the kiln worker came to the room and left behind were just ordinary gossip, light and fluffy, worse than cotton wool. It stands to reason that sissies have heard cocoons long ago in this life. Why did he suddenly suffer? Gone. No matter what, when Qin Ping met the swordsman wearing a hat, the latter said something casually, and he didn't talk about people's right and wrong behind his back, so the young man silently remembered it. It's not just Qin Pingon who doesn't know a few truths, but he cherishes the truth very much. But he knew very early on that sometimes a word can really kill a person. There are dozens of mountains stretching to the west, some are high and some are low, some are big and some are small, but there are only a few hills beside the 3-point water in the name of the mountain, and there is only the smallest hill near the town. It is recorded in the files in the official office of the Kiln Supervision and Construction Department that it is called Yishan. Of course, the Ministry of Rights of the Great Li Dynasty has a more obscure name, Zhenju Mountain. Yishan, the name of the mountain, brings water, and it is so fussy that Zhou Xian likes it very much. Moreover, he is timid by nature and is most afraid of ghosts in his life. Therefore, before he was alive, he actually thought about where he would be buried after death. To stay over there, you can try to be as close to the town as possible. The hill is barren and overgrown with weeds, and there are not even a few trees suitable for chopping for firewood, so almost no townspeople have ever climbed this hill. After that, there is no need to ask for scolding. A small grave hidden in the weeds will not hinder anyone's eyes, so it is really the best. People eat dirt for a lifetime and dirt eats people once. Buried in peace. Zhou Xian is buried here. Zhenju Mountain was finally bought by Qin Pingon for only 1 gold coin. At that time, Qin Pingon didn't think deeply about why it must be the spring festival money among the 3 kinds of gold and copper coins. This is fate. A good relationship with a good beginning and a good end. One is Qin Pingon, who is the least afraid of ghosts, and the other is the sissy who was the least afraid of Qin Pingon during his lifetime. Later, in Sudian, a girl nicknamed Yanji, together with Shi Lingshan in Taoya Lane, became Old Man Yang's apprentice, and usually worked in the pharmacy. She is Zhou Xian's niece. After becoming a master student, after teaching boxing one time, the old man sat in the backyard and swallowed his clouds, rarely having a few off-topic conversations that had nothing to do with martial arts. The old man asked, "You want to repay your kindness after learning boxing?" Su Dian nodded. "Is it to help your uncle pay off his debt?" Su Dian still nodded. "Aside from repaying debts and repaying favors? Uncle and I both think he is a really good man." "Your uncle Zhou Xian." The word drought is easy to understand, and it doesn't rain. A boy who has just studied for a few days in the school knows the meaning. Dry without rain and sun is drought. The old man wrote a word in the air with a tobacco stick, and Sudian, who had never read a book, naturally didn't recognize it at all, but the girl guessed the answer. But the character Su has more meanings. The ancient character Su is a pictographic character, implying that a branch or straw is pierced through the gills to lift fish. And the shape of the character has the appearance of hanging down like a whisker. There are 2 layers of meaning here. Just a surname, it has already revealed Zhou Xian's situation and origin. A fish without water with its gills suspended, unable to reach the sky or land, is punished and endured hardship. The rain master was relegated to the dust and fell to the ground like the beard of a rain dragon. Erase the story. The surname is a good surname, but it's a pity that the name was chosen wrong. An old scholar's article on discussing soldiers once had the phrase, Su Renja died, which means the word su, which means towards. A fish comes out of the water, but it is not really put to death. As long as it returns to the water, it can be resurrected, so the resurrection from death is called su. This also involves the so-called retreat in Buddhism. If it is said that turning back is the shore, what if turning back again? Doesn't it mean that the fish is already in the water but it's just suffering and dissatisfaction? That's why Su Han, out of the dozens of dragon kills, chose the entrance of the Baoshi kiln where Old Man Yao was in charge. The priest reigns and the rain master burns the fire. The woman is Yushir and the man is Su Han. After all the suffering, I finally got relief. Punting boats cross by themselves, don't ask outside. God helps those who help themselves. When Su Dian was learning boxing in Yashan Qingming Tianxia, he accidentally saw a collection of poems, and there happened to be a poem about praying for rain in Yishan Mountain recorded on it. Although Su Shui is full of feet, it will not save the spring and summer drought. Sighs are everywhere, the sky is not heard, singing and dancing all night, dragons fight. There is a constant flow of water in the world and there is no difference between coming and going every year. Unknowingly, Sudian's face was full of tears, and she raised her head to look at the rain curtain outside the window. She murmured softly, God. This day the black cat visited Yang's pharmacy again, jumped off the roof and landed gently on the bench. Just now in an alley Hu Feng got the cicada slew. This young man who wanders the streets and alleys has liked to go to the old porcelain mountain with Dong Shuijing since he was a child to pick up the broken porcelain pieces he likes. He occasionally gets something just like picking up a gold in a dung heap. The one you chose was that brat who in peas and crotchless pants? Old Man Yang shook his head, thinking of Li Huai. There was a rare smile on the old man's withered and wrinkled face. Li Huai is the only exception. From the very beginning, the old man has not been dragged to the gambling table. Even Li Huai's natal porcelain was bought by the old man and returned to the child. But this does not mean that the existence of Li Huai is unimportant. On the contrary, Li Huai to a large extent arranges for the heavens and is responsible for conferring the gods, similar to the Fengjing in the current world, and this child distributes opportunities and at the same time, Li Huai can stay out of the matter. When a girl in a red padded jacket ran out of school in a hurry, she led the way for Uncle Li to find Li Huai. This made Li Huai, who was wearing open-crotch trousers, immediately have a good impression of this eccentric classmate, and at that moment Li Baoping, the stick of incense in the backyard of the pharmacy, instantly rose a lot. In Nipping Lane, two people with very different identities and realms bowed to each other. After the catastrophic accident at the covered bridge, there was an unknown Q&A. Mr. Qi, is it really a good thing for him to do this? A scholar with twin temples and stars, silent and guilty. He once carved a seal and presented it to Qin Shishir, the junior apprentice who took the apprentice on his behalf. Sitting on the bank of the blue stone cliff, the girl in green clothes eating cakes looked at the boy in straw sandals whom she had met for the first time. People depend on food, and the gluttonous girl seemed to see the most delicious food in the world, so she couldn't help but look at it a few more times. Because she is a practitioner, she was the first to see the young man, and then the young man with good eyesight who was different from ordinary people saw her. In the end, the boy traveled far away again and again, and the former girl finally ascended to the sky and left. Longquan Jinzong moved all the mountains and created a Hon Kim lake. The young man once left his hometown and returned to his hometown once, and brought a gift to Miss Ruan, who was helping to look after the home. It was Qin Pingan's first time traveling far away, and it was not in vain. When he returned home, there were girls in pink skirts and children in Tsing-yi beside him. Perhaps the fine tradition of picking up people and going home, when the mountain master went out, began at that time? Later, when I went to the Great Wall of Sword Qi for the first time, and then returned from Tongyi's Hao, there was a little heightened by my side. Traveling to Luzhou and Beiju, he brought back a little girl in black standing in a basket, the dumb lake monster. The Great Wall of Sword Qi, waking up in the creation cave on the sea, and there are 9 more sword fairy embryos beside him. That gift was a worthless item. Just a green bamboo slip with a line of small characters engraved on it. Duan's Hensing 5 characters, landscapes meet again. When Wan Xiu received this gift, she was very happy. She didn't even hide that happiness. Even the little boy in green clothes and the girl in pink skirt saw it clearly. After the town opened, Kai Jinjian of Yunxia Mountain was tricked by Jinjuan Jiang, and his Dao heart was unstable, so he shot and broke the Chongqing bridge of the boy in Nipping Lane. Qin Pingan's left hand was wrapped with a piece of natal broken porcelain, and he suddenly rushed out in an alley, slashing Kai Jinjian. This was the first person among the younger generation in the town to personally kill a qi practitioner on the mountain before Ma Kushuan. At that moment, in the patio in the backyard of the pharmacy, a stick of incense that was about to burn out suddenly blazed up. The incense mist filled the air and the momentum exploded. The man who leads the donkey and wears a hat claims to be a swordsman. He escorted the group of children to study in the Sui dynasty. On the way, he once joked with Lin Shui, which was an unintentional remark. He asked Lin Shui and Qin Pingan to exchange their names. Lin Shui's father, Lin Jingqing, was the guard at the time, and the deepest meaning of the guard was, of course, the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper is naturally something that needs to be looked after. For example, guard that one, let that one be safe. On the way to school, Li Huai, who is best at nesting, once made up his mind to give Qin Pingan the most important things in the future. In a fairy inn in Huang Tinghua, Lin Shou said sorry to Qin Pingan for the first time. But what really made Lin Shui recognize Qin Pingan was Qin Pingan's next sentence: "I want to get the money back." Earlier, at the Candied Hawes stall in Xinghua Lane, Zhou Xian nodded slightly when the man looked at the kid who ran away by the side of the road. It was the first time in the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and it was probably the first time in Qin Pingan's life that he was so determined, recognized himself so much, and had no doubts about himself. Recalling that on the golden arched bridge, Sister Xianxia said that she didn't recognize herself, but only because she believed in Mr. Qi, she was willing to believe in herself.